Chapter 441. In the 7th round, the most anticipated battle was naturally Hunyo battling Ao Xinglai. Everyone had already witnessed Hunyo's unreasonable destructive power. Even the strongest flower blossom tier cultivator couldn't stand against her teeth. However, destructive power was destructive power, and didn't represent battle prowess. Everyone wanted to see Hunyo's actual battle. She would undoubtedly be everyone's formidable opponent. Thankfully, the other monster, Ling Han, didn't participate in the battle, or else everyone would have another target to be wary of. Ao Xinglai was very, very displeased. Why did he draw a freak like Hunyo? However, it had already happened, and an elite like him naturally wouldn't shrink back. Creating the possibility from the impossible was the character of an elite. He raised his long sword horizontally, his expression solemn. His opponent was only a little girl, so he obviously wouldn't say any pleasantries. No matter how brilliant his speech was, it would only make others laugh at him. Hunyo's ultimate move, invincible wind and fire wheels. Hunyo charged out, her arms dancing in circles like two wheels, smashing towards Ao Xinglai. Ao Xinglai was unafraid. He had the complete advantage in cultivation level, which also meant that he had the advantage in power. This was the unshakable truth of martial art. He stabbed out, and 7 flashes of sword chi flew out, slicing towards Hunyo from different directions. He was similarly confident in his attack power. As long as he managed to land a hit, Hunyo would definitely lose. With a flower blossom tier cultivator keeping watch, it was impossible for anyone to die here. Hunyo used her high-speed movement technique, and with a schwa, appeared behind Ao Xinglai. Pang, 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 invincible wind and fire wheels smashed onto his back. Pang, 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 one punch followed by another. Her fist power had the destructive power of 20 stars of the spiritual ocean tier. How terrifying was that? Added with the fact that Ao Xinglai didn't expect her speed to be so fast, he used all his power on the thrust of his sword, and the defense on his back was extremely weak. Instantly, he staggered forward, continuously throwing up blood. No way, the spectators were all dumbfounded. How could there possibly be such a fast speed? Such absolute speed, coupled with terrifying destructive power, this was a perfect combination. If one wanted to deal with such an attack, they could only use an area of effect attack from all directions without any blind spots to prevent Hunyo from getting close, or use a killing move when she got close. Ao Xinglai roared in fury, and hurriedly used his origin power to protect his back. Pang, 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 the will of martial art clashed violently, forming one brilliant pattern after another. He finally steadied himself. The battle prowess of 20 stars of the spiritual ocean tier was still only in the spiritual ocean tier, after all, and would not be able to cause any damage to his spiritual pedestal tier defense. He turned around, wanting to face Hunyo head-on, but was Hunyo's speed something that he could match? He turned around, and Hunyo also moved, following closely behind him like a shadow. Pang, 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 Ao Xinglai could only take a beating. He had the power of the spiritual pedestal tier, but it was completely useless. Hunyo's Heaven Wolf Claw. Seeing that punches were ineffective, Hunyo switched to using claws. This time, even Ao Xinglai's defense could not withstand it, and streaks of fresh blood spurted out from his back. Enough, the referee said, and stopped the battle. This battle was out of everyone's expectations, but it was also within reason. It was unexpected because the battle was so one-sided. Ao Xinglai was, after all, ranked 78th in the last prodigy roll, yet he practically did not even have the ability to fight back. However, Hunyo had displayed the destructive power of 20 stars of the flower blossom tier, so this kind of result seemed to be within reason. In the 8th round, Lu Yutong also smoothly advanced. At this point, the 4 people by Ling Han's side had all advanced into the prodigy role. This was definitely a miracle, because even for great clans like the Beast Emperor sect and the Winter Moon sect, there were only 2 or 3 disciples that could simultaneously enter into the prodigy role. Now, it was a matter of how far these 4 people could advance. Lu Yutong, Ken Yi, and Zhu Wujiu could probably only advance beyond the 50th place, but as long as Hunyo performed as usual, she definitely had the ability to charge for the first place. The first day's battles ended, and the new candidates for the prodigy role were all born. Of the 56 people that remained in the last prodigy role, 7 were actually eliminated. In other words, more than half of the new prodigy role had changed faces, which was something that rarely happened in the history of the prodigy role. The second day, the ranking tournament began. Though Ling Han went, he did not care too much. It was only an empty title, and increasing his strength was the way to go. The battles were very intensive, and everyone had to fight 10 battles every day for 10 days. The outcome of each battle would affect the final ranking. Thus, if one wanted to obtain a good ranking on the prodigy role, each battle was very important. Lu Yutong, Zhu Wujiu, and Can Yi were restricted by their cultivation level after all. If they encountered a spiritual pedestal tier opponent, they would definitely lose, but if they encountered a spiritual ocean tier opponent, they would win more than lose. Only Hunyo advanced triumphantly, but when the little girl encountered Zhu Wujiu on the third day, she voluntarily forfeited the battle and gave the latter a victory. On the 5th day, she encountered Can Yi again and similarly threw the match. On the 7th day, she encountered Lu Yutong and did not throw the match. These were the only 2 defeats she had. And on the ranking list, the mysterious person, Yang Junhao, displayed absolute strength. Even Kulu Yang, Zhu Xianer, Zhuiyude, and other prodigies of the previous prodigy role like Huang Han, Shi Ping, and the others were trampled underfoot. At present, he had 98 wins and 0 defeats, occupying the first place. Next were Lu Yang, Zhu Xianer, and the others. They all had 96 wins and 2 defeats, one by Yang Junhao, and the other by Hunyo. Obviously, Yang Junhao had already obtained the first place in the prodigy role. The last round was the anticipated battle between Yang Junhao and Hunyo. Unfortunately, the result could no longer affect the ranking. When the battle began, Hunyo still relied on her speed to obtain an overwhelming advantage, but her claws could not break through Yang Junhao's defense. She was also unwilling to bite Yang Junhao because he was dirty. Thus, she could not obtain victory, and in the end, the battle ended in a draw. And because of this, Yang Junhao obtained the first place in this prodigy role with an absolute advantage of 98 wins and 1 draw. The second place was Lu De with 97 wins, the third was Hunyo with 96 wins, the fourth was Zhu Xianer with 96 wins, and the 5th to 10th were Huang Han, Zhuiyude, Shi Ping, Shen Zhongcheng, Shui Gucheng, and Ji Derong. Can Yi was 48th, Lu Yutong was 52nd, and Zhu Wujiu was 79th. Additionally, Yu Kaiyu's ranking was very high, rushing up to 22nd place in one go. After using the Restore Origin pill to strengthen his foundation, his rise was indeed very fierce. However, everyone felt it was unfair that Hunyo was ranked 3rd. She defeated the 2nd place, and in her battle with Yang Junhao, Hunyo did not use her full strength, because she did not use her strongest teeth. Otherwise, it was guaranteed that Yang Junhao would also be kneeling. But it did not matter. In another year, the prodigy role would not be ranked like this. Instead, it would be ranked according to the actual battle results of the hundreds of people on the roll, taking into account spirit tools, luck, alchemical pills, and so on. Moreover, how old was Hunyo? She was only 6 years old now, and could still dominate the prodigy role for a whole 24 years. She was already so fierce in the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, so who would be able to match her in the spiritual pedestal tier? After the prodigy tournament ended, a big piece of news suddenly spread out. The 12 heaven mystery realms were about to open, and the 100 people on the prodigy roll would automatically obtain the right to enter. Holy shit! When Ling Han heard this news, he immediately cursed. Chapter 442. The 12 heaven mystery realms opened once every 100 years, but this 100 years was only a rough number. Sometimes it was 90 years, and sometimes it was 100 years, there was no precise date. This was a mystery realm that belonged to the North region, and there were countless examples of people obtaining benefits and accomplishing great things inside. It was said that the 4 strongest sects had obtained great benefits in the 12 heaven mystery realms, which was why they could stand out among the other sects and become the 4 strongest. As for what the benefits were, the 4 great forces obviously wouldn't say. This was their biggest secret. Unlike the Devil's Sky mystery realm, which anyone could enter, the 12 heaven mystery realms had strict entry restrictions. One was the number of people, and the other was the comparison of cultivation and age. It didn't strictly limit who couldn't enter. For example, a 100-year-old spiritual infant tier warrior could enter, but a 100-year-old flower blossom tier warrior couldn't. A 30-year-old deity transformation tier warrior could, but a 30-year-old spiritual ocean tier warrior couldn't. To sum it up, only youngsters, who belonged to various levels of martial art were qualified to enter, which meant that they had great potential. It was still unclear how many people could enter the 12 heaven mystery realms, but every entry quota was in the hands of the North region's great sections. The stronger the sect, the more the quota, and vice versa. For example, the Spirit Treasures Pavilion had 100 quotas, but they were a loose party that did business, so what use did they have for this quota? Thus, the Spirit Treasures Pavilion simply generously gave it to those on the Prodigy roll, which could be considered as adding some weight to the Prodigy roll. This time, the 12 heaven mystery realms opened a bit later. 103 years had passed since the last time. Ling Han was depressed. If he'd known earlier, he would have gone to obtain a quota on the Prodigy roll, so that he could automatically obtain the qualification to enter the mystery realm, but now he had to think of another way. The Alchemist Society or the Winter Moon sect? If he disguised himself as Han Lin and returned to the Winter Moon sect, the AO family would definitely stop him. There wasn't much hope, so he could only go to the Alchemist Society. Ling Han immediately went to the North Pill Pavilion. He found Lu Jitong, but the latter told him that alchemists focused on alchemy and improving alchemy, so how would they have time to waste in some mystery realm? Thus, even if the Alchemist Society had decisive power, they didn't have a quota. How do I get a spot? When Ling Han returned home, he saw that Zhu Xian'er had come to visit. As it turned out, the 1-month period had already passed. However, she had been fighting in the Prodigy battle for the past few days, so she hadn't had the time to come. Now that the Prodigy battle had ended, she naturally couldn't resist coming over. Ling Han's eyes lit up and he said, "Get me a slot to enter the 12 heaven mystery realms and I will give you the crimson red chilling ice grass." Zhu Xian'er instantly revealed a troubled expression. She was only in the spiritual pedestal tier, and was unable to influence the sect's decision to give up a spot, and the 12 heaven mystery realms could very possibly change one's fate, so who would easily give them up? "Xian will do her best," she said. Zhu Xian'er immediately returned to the Half Moon sect. For something as important as the quota for the 12 heaven mystery realms, she had to personally return to convince the higher-ups of the sect, but she had no confidence at all. That was because if the crimson red chilling ice grass could completely cure her master, then the Half Moon sect would naturally not mind using a spot to exchange for an elite of the spiritual infant tier. However, the problem was that the crimson red chilling ice grass was only a supplementary ingredient. Thinking about the several heaven rank elixirs required, it was simply a pipe dream. Would the Half Moon sect do something so unprofitable? Ling Han did not hold much hope for this. He was waiting. Maybe some party would take out 1 or 2 spots to auction, and then he would only need to prepare a large amount of origin crystals. Lu Yutong and the others were naturally willing to give up their spots to Ling Han. After all, the Black Tower could bring people in, but the problem was that their spots could only be given up, and could not be transferred. A few days later, another shocking piece of news spread. The Jiang clan was going to recruit a son-in-law, and the one being married was their beloved daughter, Jiang Luxian, the eldest young lady of the extreme young 3 beauties. It was very traditional, a martial arts competition to find a spouse. This was also considered a big deal. If it was just a martial arts competition to find a spouse, then it naturally wouldn't be a big deal. However, if one could win the Jiang clan's beauty, he would also receive a dowry, and it was this dowry that caused a stir in the whole extreme Yang city, no, the whole North region. Of the 12 mystery realms, the key to open the Sagittarius Palace Hall. As long as one had the key to open the 12 mystery realms, then there was no need to walk through the entrance of the mystery realm, and one could directly enter the mystery realm with the key once they arrived nearby. Thus, the Jiang clan recruiting this son-in-law was equivalent to giving away an entry spot, plus the secret treasure in the Sagittarius Palace. How could this news not cause a stir in the whole North region? In the 12 heaven mystery realms, spiritual qi was abundant, and cultivating for one day inside was equivalent to tens or even hundreds of days outside. Moreover, 100 years of isolation from the world, coupled with the abundant spiritual qi, how many spirit medicines could be produced? Merely these 2 points were incredibly attractive, not to mention that there was also the key to open the Sagittarius Palace. According to the legends, who knew how many years ago, there was a lucky person who opened the Ares Palace, obtained the inheritance within, and finally became an elite of the heaven tier. However, at that time, the environment was too terrible, and shattering void tier elites couldn't appear, causing him to stop here. But now, martial art was flourishing, and there were quite a few shattering void tier elites in the middle state, so after obtaining the inheritance of the Sagittarius Palace, he would definitely be able to advance into the shattering void tier. Entering the shattering void tier meant that there was hope of becoming a god. The whole North region was stirred by this, and many people even wanted to openly snatch it. But thinking about it, how many people wanted to obtain that key now, and whoever made a move would definitely be treated as the bird that stuck out and beaten. Everyone wanted it, so it became a situation where no one dared to make a move rashly. After all, the extreme Yang city still had the North Pill Pavilion and the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, 2 colossi, so who would dare to act recklessly? If you snatched the key, wouldn't that be giving others a reason to talk, causing people to gang up on you? Moreover, even the Half Moon sect and the Blood Flame Valley might not dare to clash head-on with the Alchemist Society and the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. Anyway, the Jiang clan was going to take out the key, so they'd just fight it out. However, there were naturally restrictions for the marriage contest. The Jiang clan had clearly stated that the participants had to be at least 40 years old and below, so old grandpas shouldn't come and join in the fun. Weren't you ashamed? The contest would be held for a total of 3 days, and at midnight 3 days later, the champion still standing on the stage would be the Jiang clan's son-in-law. When Ling Han heard this, his heart was naturally moved. At first, he was still fretting over where he could get a place, and now it was right in front of him, and there was even a treasure in the Sagittarius Palace. However, the problem was that he didn't want to marry Jiang Luxian in the slightest. He had the intention to let Qin Yi or Zhu Wujiu go, but their strength. Sai, Hunyo was fierce, but the problem was, even if she was a man, she was still too young, wasn't she? Chapter 443. You guessed right, but there's no reward. Ling Han laughed loudly, and his figure once again flew up. Holding the purple Baal sword in his hand, he used the demon fairy step to prevent the opponent from aiming at him while beginning to accumulate power, preparing to unleash the ultimate move, 10,000 techniques return to 1. When the mysterious 3,000 was used to attack a large number of enemies, the effect was great, but to use it to attack, 10,000 techniques return to 1 was obviously more kick-ass. Gathering 3,000 attacks into one attack, the destructive power was simply unimaginable. Shoot for me! Big Metal Head exclaimed. The cannon muzzle moved here and there, but couldn't aim at Ling Han all along, so he simply gave up on him and turned to aim at Helian Sun Shui. Helian Sun Shui was instantly scared pale, and said to Ling Han, I didn't hit them, so why are they hitting me? Because they're bad people, and bad people won't reason with you, Ling Han explained. So against bad people, you don't have to reason with them, just directly swing the brick and smash it. Oh. Helian Sun Shui nodded, made an aiming gesture, and then, she smashed the brick in her hand. The brick flew furiously, and just as it was about to smash onto the black ship, a black screen of light suddenly appeared on the ship's body, forming a protective shield just like before. However, this time, the light screen didn't have the desired effect. With a pang, the light screen was actually completely shattered by the brick. The brick's momentum didn't stop, and it directly sank into the ship's body. Then, pang, 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 pang sounds were continuously heard. the brick flew out from the other side of the ship's body like a shooting star, fiercely shooting into the distance. My brick! Helian Sun Shui cried out in surprise, and hurriedly stepped on the waves to chase after it. Hong, long, long, the black ship emitted a strange sound, and there was fire and black smoke coming out. The ship's body actually began to tilt and was actually about to sink. Ling Han grimaced. Helian Sun Shui's brick was really awesome, directly smashing and sinking a large-sized spirit tier-level treasured ship. Pang, pang, pang. The ship's body began to explode. The cannons on the ship could turn origin crystals into attacks. This was very powerful, but it was also extremely unstable. Now that the ship's body was on fire, it also caused these specially processed origin crystals to explode. This was equivalent to a few hundred spiritual infant tier elites bombarding inside the ship's body, and the resulting destructive power was too terrifying. The entire ship practically disintegrated in an instant. Most of the pirates didn't even have time to react, and were directly blasted into dregs. Only Big Metalhead and his tall assistant managed to escape in time. After all, they were in the flower blossom tier, and being unable to stand against spiritual infant tier elites was one thing. It could be seen that they were quick-witted, and escaping in time still left them a sliver of hope. Unfortunately, Ling Han was waiting for them. Ling Han knocked them out with 2 slaps, and directly brought them into the Black Tower. Han! Helian Sun Shui returned with the brick, and seeing Ling Han suddenly disappear from where he stood, she couldn't help but be very displeased. This guy would sometimes suddenly disappear, making her wait for half a day. In the Black Tower, Ling Han slapped Big Metalhead and the tall man awake. Since they entered the Black Tower, then they could forget about leaving for the rest of their lives. Considering that they were pirates, they definitely killed no small number of people these years, and the punishment of imprisonment for life wasn't excessive. Where is this? After Big Metalhead woke up, he was instantly greatly shocked. Boss, where are we? The tall man grabbed Big Metalhead's arm in fright. You ask me, but who do I ask? Big Metalhead immediately slapped the tall man's head. Cough. Ling Han coughed, and said, you guys are now my prisoners. If I want you guys to live, then you guys can live. If I want you guys to become eunuchs, then you guys will have one less thing. Hiss, Big Metalhead and the tall man hurriedly covered their crotches with their hands. The reason why men were men, wasn't it because they had one more thing? Ling Han laughed mischievously, and stretched out his finger to the left and right. Instantly, Big Metalhead and the tall man's hands were separated by an invisible force. Their bodies also floated up, and their 4 limbs were forcibly pulled into the Chinese character. You don't mess around. My boss is very powerful. If you dare to touch a single hair of mine, my boss will definitely slaughter you. Big Metalhead was so frightened that his face turned pale, and he hurriedly warned Ling Han. Ling Han gave an ah, and said, aren't you the boss? I'm their boss, but I still have a boss. Big Metalhead said stubbornly. I'll give you a word of advice, don't ever go against my boss. Although my boss is also in the flower blossom tier, he grasps many strange things, and his battle prowess is too terrifying. Oh, just like that ship, Ling Han said casually. I only have a silver dragon ship, and our boss uses a golden dragon ship. That's what's called powerful. Big Metalhead said proudly. Ling Han deliberately sighed, and said, it's the first time being so awesome as a prisoner. Forget it, I'll just castrate him first. Castrate? You can't castrate him. Big Metalhead was so scared that his face turned green. Aren't you afraid my boss will find you for revenge? Not afraid, Ling Han said with a smile. Although these words were simple and clear, Big Metalhead didn't know how to refute. On the side, the tall man didn't even dare to let out a fart, fearing that Ling Han would notice him. Ling Han summoned the bone sword, and said, I ask one question, you guys answer one, and answer together. Whoever answers too slowly, I'll peel off one of his eggs, and after peeling off the egg, I'll peel off the roots. You guys calculate for yourselves, how many eggs and roots do you have for me to peel off? Wasn't this simple? 2 eggs, the tall man said. 1 egg, Big Metalhead said, almost in unison. Obviously, Ling Han's threat was very effective. Huh, boss, you only have 1 egg, the tall man immediately asked curiously. Ha 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 ha, I'm dying of laughter. How can there be someone with 2 eggs? Big Metalhead laughed loudly, tears seemingly about to come out from his eyes. Were these 2 buffoons? Ling Han waved the bone sword, making the 2 of them shut up, and then said, "Who's your boss?" Feng Wei Qi. Big Metalhead. Ling Han glanced at the tall man. Was this guy really stupid? He turned to Big Metalhead, and said, "What's the background of this Feng Wei Qi?" "I don't know, either. I was originally a tyrant here, running amok in these waters. Who wasn't afraid of me? But our boss is more powerful. After coming here 3 years ago, he subdued me and even gave me that ship, making me even more powerful," Big Metalhead said. "And that armor, it was also given to you by Feng Wei Qi?" Ling Han asked again. "Yes." Big Metalhead nodded obediently. "Feng Wei Qi, where is he now?" Ling Han asked. Big Metalhead was a bit hesitant, but the bone sword flashed, and blood bloomed in his crotch. He instantly shivered in fright and said, "Our boss is on Blackwood Island. He's always been there." "And where is Blackwood Island?" "In the southwest corner of the fog water domain. Ordinary people can't find it at all." Big Metal had actually revealed a complacent expression, but immediately felt a pain in the balls, and his expression instantly collapsed. Chapter 444. How vexing, after I reach the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, how many stars of battle prowess will I have? Ling Han scratched his head. With his current battle prowess, how many times could he instantly kill himself in the same stage as he was in his last life? 1,000 times, 10,000 times. Ling Han couldn't help but wonder just how powerful the Sword Emperor and Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had been in the past. It was just that even though his battle prowess was great, the price he had to pay for it was that his cultivation speed had slowed down. Similarly, if he wanted to advance a step further, he would need to accumulate 10 times more elemental energy than others. Thankfully, I have an immortal grade spirit base, and am also an alchemist. Otherwise, with such a solid foundation, I might not be able to break through to the flower blossom tier in this lifetime. He shivered. Congratulations, young Master Han. When Ling Han stood up, Lu Yutong and the others all congratulated him. Ling Han nodded and said, "You guys have to work harder too. Don't fall too far behind me." "Yes." Everyone, including Guang Yuan, nodded. If they couldn't share Ling Han's worries and difficulties, they wouldn't be able to keep their faces. After all, they had gotten so many benefits from Ling Han. Everyone exited the Black Tower. Exactly 1 day had passed, and the Jiang clan's martial arts tournament for espouse had yet to begin. After a day, Zhu Xian'er came to visit, but her face was filled with disappointment as she said, "Grandmaster Ling, can you change the condition?" Obviously, the sect refused to take out a quota to exchange for a level 7 spirit medicine. It wasn't that a level 7 spirit herb wasn't valuable enough, but the crimson-red chilling ice grass's uses were very limited. Other than being the main ingredient for recovering spirit roots, it could only be used as a supplementary ingredient for the tiger-subduing heavenly luck pill. Therefore, this kind of spirit herb would only show its value when someone needed it. If it could increase one's cultivation level in the spiritual infant tier, or increase one's comprehension of martial art, would those old monsters of the half-moon sect be extremely proactive? Ling Han thought about it and said, "Alright, I'll trade it for a piece of information." Zhu Xian'er was astounded. A stock of level 7 spirit medicine could be exchanged for just 1 piece of information. Previously, Ling Han had even fought so fiercely with her. She could not understand this. Could it be that, in fact, the other party was interested in him, so he was using this method of loosening the reins only to grasp better? "May I ask what Grandmaster Ling wishes to know?" she asked. How did your master get injured? Ling Han was very curious. Logically speaking, there couldn't possibly be an elite of the Shattering Void tier in the North region, but if it wasn't an elite of the Shattering Void tier making a move, how could a spiritual infant tier cultivator suffer a Dao wound? In any case, he already had full confidence that he would be able to obtain the Jiang clan's key, so he naturally did not care about the quota to enter the secret realm. He only hoped that the Jiang clan's key was not a toy that Jiang Yifeng had left behind as a joke. If that was the case, he would be screwed over by his own disciple. Zhu Xian'er's expression involuntarily changed. Even through a layer of white gauze, the change in her eyes could be seen. After a while, she said, Master discovered a prehistoric site and was injured by a restriction in the process of exploring it. Ling Han clapped his hands and said, as expected. There were no Shattering Void tier cultivators in the North region, so how could a spiritual infant tier elite suffer a Dao wound? The only possibility was an ancient historical site.
Seeing Ling Han's excited expression, Zhu Xian'er was instantly displeased, and said, Grandmaster Ling, please respect my master. Ling Han laughed mischievously, took out a stalk of crimson-red chilling ice grass, and placed it on the table. The 2 stalks of crimson-red chilling ice grass had long since been harvested by him in case they bore fruit and couldn't be used as medicine. The 3rd stalk bore fruit and was planted again. In the future, 3 would become 9, 9 would become 27, and very soon, there would be a ridiculous number. Zhu Xian'er's beautiful eyes immediately lit up, and she reached out to take it. Ling Han raised his right hand, and she instantly grabbed nothing but air. Grandmaster Ling, what do you mean by this? Zhu Xian'er said angrily. Was this guy going to go back on his word? Ling Han placed the crimson-red chilling ice grass back on the table, and said, Where is that ancient site? Zhu Xian'er hesitated slightly, but when she recalled that even her master suffered a Dao wound there, it was obvious that even if there was a great fortune inside, it would have no fate with them, so she said, Agriculture Enclosed Mountain, Agarwood Valley. Ling Han nodded, raised his hand, and left the crimson-red chilling ice grass on the table. Zhu Xian'er hurriedly stored the spirit herb into her spatial ring, and revealed a joyful expression as she said, Thank you, Grandmaster Ling. Ling Han brushed off his hand, and said, You can leave now. Zhu Xian'er's pretty face couldn't help but twitch slightly. How unhappy was he to see her, actually chasing her away. Yet that indifferent attitude wasn't fake, which made her even more depressed. Women were really strange. Just now, she mistakenly thought that Ling Han was interested in her, and she was worried that Ling Han would do something to her. Now that Ling Han completely ignored her, she was depressed again. Sigh. She was angry in her heart and said, Grandmaster Ling is probably preparing to become the Jiang clan's son-in-law. Otherwise, he wouldn't have changed his request, and easily given the crimson-red chilling ice grass to her. Ling Han laughed mischievously, and said, What, jealous? Wishful thinking. Zhu Xian'er only snorted lightly, and said, In the Jiang clan's martial arts tournament to find a spouse, not only the top 10 elites of the prodigy role will participate, but also the elites of the past few tournaments will appear. Although they haven't advanced into the flower blossom tier, their strength might have already reached the level of half-step into the flower blossom tier. Ling Han only smiled. His current strength probably reached half-step into the flower blossom tier, and in the future, it was possible that he would be infinitely close to the flower blossom tier. Zhu Xian'er's beautiful eyes turned, and she suddenly said, Grandmaster Ling wants to see Xian'er's true appearance. What the hell?
Ling Han looked at her in surprise, but Zhu Xian'er smiled lightly, stood up, and left, saying, When Xian'er's mood is good, maybe I'll let Grandmaster Ling see my true appearance. Saying so, she swayed her slim waist and left, extremely flirtatious. A little vixen. Even if Ling Han's heart was set on martial art, a strong desire still rose within him as he looked at her captivating figure, and he had an urge to rush out and push her down to the ground, and then he. He hurriedly restrained his thoughts. Who said that a beautiful woman couldn't seduce? On the contrary, a usually dignified and solemn expression that suddenly revealed a myriad of flirtatious expressions would only be more alluring. As expected, every beauty was a vixen transformed into, it didn't matter if she wanted to seduce someone or not. Another day passed, and the Jiang clan's martial arts tournament to find a spouse officially began. Ling Han brought Lu Yutong and the others to join in the fun. Anyways, the tournament would last for 3 days, so there was no need for him to go now. It wouldn't be too late to wait until the 3rd day. Moreover, he would participate as Han Lin and leave after getting the key. As for the Jiang clan, he would compensate them in the future. Is there even a need to compete? It's definitely the newly advanced first on the prodigy roll, Yang Junhao. He defeated all the young generation of the North region. A martial arts tournament is a martial arts tournament, but there are no restrictions on the use of various spirit tools now. Everyone's battle prowess will be vastly different. Furthermore, before entering the arena, one has to sign a life and death contract. That's a battle to the death, and a battle to the death is completely different from sparring. Furthermore, experts who have just entered the prime of their lives like Yu Kuan-Luan can also participate. It will be difficult for Yang Junhao to win the beauty as he wished. That's right. The martial arts tournament for a spouse this time will definitely be more exciting than the prodigy tournament. The Jiang clan rented a space in the Great Colosseum for the martial arts tournament for a spouse, and the Spirit Treasures Pavilion took the opportunity to earn another sum of money. Whether it was to enter the arena to spectate or participate in the tournament, one had to pay a piece of origin crystal. Ling Han paid the entrance fee and entered the arena to spectate the tournament. The battles on the first day were indeed lackluster. Most of them were people who had yet to make it onto the prodigy roll, making their presence known. It was precisely because of this that the Jiang clan and the Spirit Treasures Pavilion worked together to change the rules of the arena. Chapter 445. The rules had changed. If one wanted to enter the arena to compete, one must first pay 10,000 crystals. If one obtained 10 consecutive victories, then the crystals would be returned, and one would obtain the qualification to enter the next round. In addition, if one could stand on the stage for a full hour, it would also be considered as 10 consecutive victories. This was the qualifier, and it would last for 3 days. After 3 days, the semi-finals would take place. All the martial artists who had obtained 10 consecutive victories would be eliminated, and the final winner would be the Jiang family's son-in-law. After learning of this news, Ling Han's face couldn't help but twitch. In his heart, he thought, the Spirit Treasures Pavilion really knows how to make money. They can even come up with so many tricks for a joust for a spouse search competition. Starting with the preliminaries and the semi-finals, they practically treat it like a genius battle. But it had to be said that this was much more attractive than before, and the battle would be even more intense. Meanwhile, the Jiang clan and the Spirit Treasures Pavilion could also make a huge profit. The tickets and participation fees would be enough to make a fortune. Those with insufficient strength would naturally not ascend the arena to challenge, as it would require 10,000 origin crystals. Who would have so much money to squander? Moreover, the preliminaries only lasted for 3 days, so they naturally could not wait until the 3rd day to participate. What if there wasn't enough time? Elites appeared one after another. Yang Junhao, Lu Yang, and Yu Kuan-Luan made their moves. They possessed absolute battle prowess, so no one dared to challenge them. They only stood there for an hour, and successfully advanced to the semi-finals. Ling Han didn't plan to take action today because he hadn't changed his appearance yet. At the end of the first day, the top rankers on the prodigy roll advanced one after another. Many of those who had been famous for many years also easily advanced to the second round. Comparatively speaking, those who had stood on the prodigy roll a few years earlier were even more powerful. After all, they had cultivated for a few more years. Below the flower blossom tier, a difference of a few years was not much. The next day, Ling Han disguised himself as Han Lin and separated from Lu Yutong and the others, entering the Colosseum alone. He handed over a piece of crystal and entered the field. Grandmaster Ling. A sweet voice suddenly sounded behind him. Ling Han turned around and pretended to be surprised. Did you call me? Yin Hong's pretty face immediately revealed a look of astonishment. This person was actually not Ling Han. She smiled faintly and said, I'm sorry, I mistook you for someone else. She then immediately mumbled, why do you look so similar? Ling Han sighed. He had only changed his face, not his body shape. If someone familiar looked at him from behind, they would easily mistake him for himself. Ao Feng was like that, and now Ling Hong was also like that. Ling Han arrived at the registration area, took out 10,000 origin crystals, and reported his identity information, Han Lin, 20 years old, from Fuyan Mountain. He received a challenge card, which meant that he had already paid the fee. When he went to challenge, he just had to hand in the challenge card. Moreover, if he were to win 10 battles, he would have to use this challenge card to get back the 10,000 crystals. If he were to lose it, then sorry, he could only blame it on his bad luck. Naturally, there was no need for him to be polite. It just so happened that the battle between two people on the stage had just ended, so he immediately jumped onto the stage. Challenge card. The referee immediately held out his hand. Ling Han tossed the challenge card over. The referee caught it, verified it, nodded, and said, begin. Brat, you can't possibly be my match. You'd better obediently go down and save some origin power for me. His opponent was a brawny man about 30 years old. He was tall, at least 2 heads taller than the average person. Those who dared to fight on the stage now were definitely people with some skills. This person had already advanced into the spiritual pedestal tier, and although he was only in the first layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, he could be counted as an elite among those under 40. He had cultivated for 10 more years, which was a huge advantage, so he was naturally full of confidence. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, why can't it be you? Get down. Ignorant brat. That person snorted, and said, forget it, I can finish you off with one punch anyways, so it doesn't matter. However, since you're disobedient, then I'll kill you. He raised his fist and punched heavily at Ling Han. Killing intent flashed past Ling Han's eyes. Since that was the case, then he didn't have to be merciful. He casually punched. Hong, a terrifying origin power spread out, and vein-like patterns opened, shining brilliantly. Pang! What's impossible? That person's fist exploded upon contact with Ling Han. As a mist of blood flew, Ling Han's fist also smashed in front of him, and the terrifying origin power vibrated, directly blasting him into a rain of blood. Hiss! The spectator seats were deathly silent. A dignified spiritual pedestal tier elite was actually blasted apart with one punch. This was too exaggerated. But after an instant, excited cheers sounded everywhere. Didn't everyone sit here for such an intense, bloody, and violent scene? Han Lin wins. The referee read the name on the challenge card and announced loudly. Han Lin. Who's Han Lin? He's so fierce that he can enter the top 20 of the prodigy roll, but I've obviously never seen him before. I know, this person is a new disciple that the Winter Moon sect took in last year. He defeated the 7 sons of Ao family once he entered the sect. What, the 7 sons of Ao family aren't his match? No wonder he's so powerful, exploding a first-layer spiritual pedestal tier elite with one punch. Strange, why didn't he participate in the prodigy tournament? Maybe the Winter Moon sect doesn't want him to overshadow the glory of the 7 sons of Ao family, so they didn't let him participate. That's right, the ancestor of the Ao family is a spiritual infant tier elite of the Winter Moon sect. If he spoke, even if Han Lin was a genius, he could only swallow it. Everyone on the stage discussed animatedly, and the expressions of the 7 sons of Ao family became extremely ugly. They didn't think that Ling Han would appear here. They were all slapped clean by Ling Han, and though their teeth had grown back, how could they forget the pain of being slapped in the face? Moreover, Ling Han killed their younger sister. Father didn't kill this brat. The 7 of them were filled with doubt. With the power of the flower blossom tear, not only did they not kill a spiritual ocean tear brat, they even allowed him to break through to the spiritual pedestal tier. Moreover, how long had it been, and this person advanced into the spiritual pedestal tier? This speed was too frightening. Ling Han stood solemnly, waiting for others to challenge him. However, the power of his punch just now was too shocking, and for a while, no one stepped forward to challenge him. Even if some people were confident that they weren't weaker than Ling Han, they didn't plan to start a fierce battle with Ling Han now. After all, the rules of the tournament had changed, and it wasn't necessary to fight for the qualification spot. It wasn't until the hour was almost up that someone leaped onto the stage. It was a middle-aged man with a white face and no beard. His hair was gray, and he seemed to be approaching the end of his life. However, his skin was smooth and tight, and he didn't look like an old man at all. Quick Sword Yang Qi, someone on the stage exclaimed. It's really him. I heard that this person doesn't live up to his reputation. He obviously has the strength of the prodigy role, but has never participated in the prodigy tournament. However, his quick sword is shocking, and it's said that no one in the same tier can defend against his quick sword. Though it's a bit exaggerated, it's enough to prove his strength. This is good. Quick Sword Yang Qi advanced into the spiritual pedestal tier 5 years ago, and with his talent, he should be at least in the 4th or 5th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier by now, right? This Han Lin is in trouble. Chapter 446. Everyone looked down on Ling Han. Although the power of his punch was very fierce, he had only killed a cultivator in the 1st layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, unlike Quick Sword Yang Qi, who was famous and had killed who knew how many spiritual pedestal tier cultivators in his hands. Yang Qi, kill him. Don't disappoint us. On the stage, some fierce people already shouted loudly. They spent 1 origin crystal just to fight a bloody battle. Yang Qi was unmoved, only staring at Ling Han, and said, "You're very strong, qualified for me to fight with my full strength." "Oh, then do you have the right to make me fight with my full strength?" Ling Han said with a smile. To be honest, he really hoped that there was someone in the spiritual pedestal tier that could make him fight with his full strength. He already felt lonely at the top, and life was as lonely as snow. Sword. Yang Qi attacked. Shua, a sword appeared in his hand at some point. The blade was as thin as a cicada's wing, and with a flick of his wrist, the tip of the sword appeared at Ling Han's left shoulder. It was shockingly fast. Too fast, as expected of Quick Sword Yang Qi. It's over, Han Lin is also going to be defeated by a single strike. Everyone shouted, but Yang Qi actually aimed at Ling Han's left shoulder and not his heart, which disappointed many people. It would be better if this strike killed someone. Ling Han smiled slightly and grabbed with his right hand, and Yang Qi's winged sword appeared in his hand. Yang Qi's expression changed drastically. His sword was already so fast, so how did Ling Han catch it? He hurriedly drew his sword, confident that with the snow-winged sword's sharpness, it was enough to cut Ling Han's hand full of wounds. However, he immediately discovered that the snow-winged sword seemed to have taken root in Ling Han's hand and actually didn't move at all. Ling Han slowly raised his left fist. Obviously, he was going to throw a punch. Yang Qi knew that if he abandoned his sword and retreated, he should be able to avoid this punch, but as a swordsman, he lived with his sword, and if the sword died, he died. He didn't abandon his sword, and only forcefully drew his sword. Unfortunately, although he had the cultivation of the 6th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, his power was actually not as strong as Ling Han's, and he couldn't draw his sword no matter what. His eyes turned cold, and he simply pushed his sword forward, wanting to pierce through Ling Han's left shoulder. However, this was also an extravagant hope. After all, Yang Qi was an expert in the way of the sword. With a loud shout, 7 streams of sword qi shot out from the tip of his sword towards Ling Han. How can you hide when you're so close? Ling Han smiled and didn't dodge at all. He just tilted his head slightly and didn't let the sword qi hit his eyes. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The 7 flashes of sword chi landed solidly on him, but he had already cultivated iron sheet body, and his physique was comparable to forging materials of the same level. The 7 flashes of sword chi did not even leave a scratch on him. Puff, seeing this scene, everyone choked. What kind of frightening defensive power was that? Sword chi was composed of a martial artist's own strength, their understanding of the sword Tao, and the carrier. Yang Qi was in the 6th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, so there was naturally no need to talk about his power. He was definitely very powerful, and being able to form 7 flashes of sword Qi, his understanding of the way of the sword was naturally not bad. Lastly, his snow-winged sword was a level 5 spirit tool, so it was definitely not weak. But even so, it didn't manage to leave a single wound on Ling Han's face. Fuck, is he still human? Is this guy's skin made from rare metal? How can it not be damaged by even this kind of sword chi? This kind of defense really makes one despair. Who can cut through this kind of defense? The spectators outside the ring all cried out in shock. Some people even held their faces in their hands, revealing expressions of complete disbelief. But not everyone was like this. For example, Yang Junhao, Lu Yang, Zhu Xianair, and Yu Kunlun all revealed expressions of battle thirst. This kind of opponent was worth fighting. They all had sky-high confidence, believing that they were absolutely invincible in a battle of the same cultivation level. Ling Han threw a punch, and with a pang, it smashed onto Yang Qi's face, instantly knocking him out. Yang Qi didn't have any killing intent towards him, so he also showed mercy. Han Lin wins. The referee announced. After defeating Yang Qi, though Ling Han didn't manage to accumulate 10 victories, the time had already reached an hour, so he naturally obtained the right to enter the next round. He left the tournament stage and returned to the ring. He could clearly feel a few solid gazes staring at him, causing him to feel a faint pain. This wasn't physical pain, but on a spiritual level. The fighting spirit of Yang Junhao and the others was too strong. Ling Han only smiled faintly. Now, who else in the spiritual pedestal tier could pose a threat to him? Unless the Sword Emperor and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden reappeared and returned to the spiritual pedestal tier, then perhaps he would have the right to fight. After all, he could be freakish, and so could the Sword Emperor and the others. The Heaven Sword sect was an ancient great sect that had connections with the realm of immortals. In his last life, only 7 people advanced into the Heaven tier, which showed how freakish the Sword Emperor and the others were. On the 3rd day, Ling Han didn't appear in the great arena. He didn't need to know which elites were among his opponents and observe their ultimate moves. In short, whoever appeared in front of him, he could send them flying with a punch. Another day passed, and the semi-finals began. A total of 49 people entered the semi-finals, so in the first round, 15 people would have a bye and automatically enter the second round, while the remaining 34 would have to battle it out for the 17 places to advance. However, who would have a bye was not decided by drawing lots, but by the Jiang clan. This was obviously unfair, but who asked them to hold the tournament for a spouse, so they had all the right to interpret. Thus, Yu Kunlun, Yang Junhao, Chao Tianyi, and the other first places on the old and new prodigy roll all had a bye without any suspense. Ling Han, Lu Yang, and other young geniuses were the same. Obviously, they were favored by the Jiang clan, not wanting them to be eliminated in the first round. Unfortunately, the Jiang clan only had one key, or else there would be quite a lot of marriageable girls. The first round ended, and the list of 32 people appeared. Although only men could participate in the tournament for a spouse, this list was definitely more awesome than this prodigy roll. There were several generations of top 10, and there was also a super freak like Ling Han. There was also one person who attracted everyone's attention, but no one knew what he looked like. Because he wore a mask, his figure was slightly thin, and he was obviously half a head shorter than normal people. His name was Zhang San, which was obviously a fake name. Ling Han swept a glance over him, and was certain that he was in the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, faintly emitting an aura that made him loathe. The second round began, and Ling Han was the 7th to fight. His opponent was the white-robed sword king, Shenzhongcheng. The first few battles ended very quickly, because the organizers arranged the strong to fight the weak as much as possible, and Ling Han against Shenzhongcheng. Did they think that Ling Han had an absolute advantage, or an absolute disadvantage? Ling Han entered the ring and nodded at Shenzhongcheng. He had a good impression of this swordsman. "Please," Shenzhongcheng said solemnly. He had seen Ling Han fight before, and knew that Ling Han was very powerful. Ling Han clenched his fists, and said, "Please." Shenzhongcheng drew his sword. Chong, a flash of sword light soared into the skies, and 7 flashes of sword chi instantly appeared, sweeping towards Ling Han. Ling Han's move was simple yet violent. He faced it head-on, raising his fists and striking fiercely. Pang, 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 with only 7 consecutive punches, without even using fist chi, Shenzhongcheng's sword was sent flying by him, and he was defeated. Chapter 447. They had not exchanged more than a dozen moves when Ling Han flicked Feng Weiqi's blood-red saber away with a swing of his sword, and placed his sword against the latter's neck. He laughed mischievously, and said, "Now can we talk? If you want to kill me, then kill me." Feng Weiqi actually did not show any fear. He looked at Ling Han coldly, and said, "However, you will also soon lose your life." "Oh, could it be that you know how to curse?" Ling Han asked with a smile. If the latter really had a treasure like the vial of curses, perhaps he would be a little wary. "My son is an elite of the spiritual infant tier, and is even at the peak stage of the spiritual infant tier." Feng Weiqi laughed loudly. "If you kill me, he will immediately sense it. No matter where you hide, he will find you, drag you out, and kill you. I really thought you weren't afraid of death. After all, you're still threatening me, wanting me to not kill you." Ling Han shook his head, patted the latter's face, and said with a smile, "Who isn't afraid of death? Being able to live well, of course no one wants to die. Tell me about the situation here. We don't have any enmity anyway, so it's not like I can't spare your life." Feng Weiqi sneered, and said, "Don't even think that what you said just now was absolutely true. My son is the small saber king of the absolute saber sect. If you don't believe me, you can find anyone to ask." Ling Han rubbed his chin, and said, "Usually, I've only seen spoiled brats brandishing the banner of their parents to act violently. I never thought that I'd actually encounter someone who uses his son's name to act tyrannically. My outlook on life has really been refreshed." He knocked Feng Weiqi unconscious with a slap, and stored him inside the Black Tower, planning to properly interrogate him. "This umbrella is so beautiful." Losing Feng Weiqi's control, that myriad sieve umbrella also fell from the sky, and was caught by Hellion Sun Shui. This girl fondled it lovingly. Ling Han went up to take a look, and couldn't help but frown. He said, "This doesn't seem to be the original, but an imitation." The handle and leaves of the umbrella were engraved with vein-like patterns that were very complicated, but the markings were very new, and didn't seem to be an ancient object at all. If this spirit tool was newly made, then it was impossible that there was only one. Moreover, these materials were only 6th tier, so if there were still 7th tier and 8th tier materials, then wouldn't they be able to make an even stronger myriad sieve umbrella? This Feng Weiqi had to be properly interrogated. Ling Han and Hunyo entered into the Black Tower, and Hellion Sun Shui could only sulk again. "Tell me everything about this cave in full detail," Ling Han said in a calm tone as he looked at Feng Weiqi. "Ha, you're delusional." Feng Weiqi appeared to be very scoundrel, but there was still fear in his eyes. Suddenly coming from the underground cave to this inexplicable place, this exceeded common sense, causing him to involuntarily feel fear. Could it be that he was unconscious for many days? Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "In this place, no one can say no to me, and you are naturally no exception. I have plenty of ways to torment you, and it's up to you how long you can persevere. Bring it on. If I say a word of weakness, then I'm your grandson," Feng Weiqi said with his head held high. Half a day later. "I'll speak, I'll tell you everything." Feng Weiqi screamed. In this half a day, he had suffered all kinds of unimaginable tortures, such as burning, drowning, and burying, making him die and live again, and live and die again. It was really a life worse than death, and he couldn't die even if he wanted to. He now only wanted to be freed. "You're really Small Saber King's father?" Ling Han asked. "Yes, I'm really his father," Feng Weiqi said, panting. His eyes had already lost focus, as if he had become stupid. "Why did you come here?" Ling Han asked. "When my son was exploring ancient sites, he discovered clues about this place. He came here first and obtained some ancient objects," Feng Weiqi answered. "But my son has to concentrate on cultivation, so I came here to take charge of the excavation project here." "What exactly is this place?" "I'm not very clear either. I only know that this belongs to an ancient dynasty from several 100,000 years ago," Feng Weiqi said. However, his next words caused Ling Han's heart to tremble. That ancient dynasty wanted to split open the skies and let the entire vast lands ascend into the realm of gods, but failed. This place is only one of the ancient dynasty's treasuries in the past. Split open the skies again. Ling Han was shocked. That ancient dynasty was really bold, wanting to let the entire continent ascend into the realm of gods and let mortals become citizens of gods. Just thinking about it made one's scalp go numb. "Tell me, how many treasures have you dug out here?" Feng Weiqi explained one by one. As Ling Han listened, he became more and more shocked. What was most abundant here were puppets. Aside from gold, silver, and iron, there was also a type of diamond puppet, but there was only one, and Small Saber King had taken it long ago. If this kind of puppet unleashed its full power, it would be equivalent to an elite of the deity transformation tier, and what was more terrifying was that it still had a considerable amount of intelligence. Additionally, the gold, silver, and iron puppets were far more than what Ling Han had found, and they were all taken by Small Saber King. As for what Small Saber King wanted to do, Feng Weiqi didn't know either. He was only excavating this historical site for his son. Aside from puppets, there were also the battleships that Ling Han saw earlier, which were only divided into two types, gold and black. The black battleships could pose a threat to Flower Blossom tier warriors, and there were as many as 100 of them, while the gold battleships could kill spiritual infant tier warriors. There were only 10 of them, and only one was left here. The others were all in Small Saber King's hands. Thankfully, this gold battleship wasn't by Feng Weiqi's side, or else Ling Han wouldn't have been able to take down Feng Weiqi so easily, and would instead be hunted down. The gold battleship was not only more powerful, it was also a flying-type treasure tool. It was no more than 10 meters long, and its flying speed was extremely fast, but it also consumed a lot of origin crystals. This Blackwood Island was also impregnable, so Feng Weiqi never thought that he would need to use this large-scale spirit tool. Aside from this, there were all kinds of practical spirit tools, such as the 10,000 Treasures umbrella.
This was indeed an imitation because the real one was already damaged, but it could still prevent deity transformation tier warriors from sensing spiritual qi, which was extremely terrifying. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh. How powerful was this ancient dynasty back then? This was only one of its treasure troves, but the various treasures excavated already made him shocked. However, the most important thing was still that obelisk. It was said that it involved a mystical power, and after 3 years, only this obelisk hadn't been excavated. The power of lightning was too terrifying, greatly affecting the progress of the project. From the information obtained by Small Saber King, that ancient dynasty had a total of 4 mystical powers, which were respectively sealed in 4 treasure troves, and the mystical power here was called Thunderclap Ninth Heaven, the weakest of the 4 mystical powers, while the strongest mystical power was called 9 Deaths Heaven Art, which had the effect of reversing life and death. Small Saber King was very concerned about this mystical power, and would ask about the excavation progress of the obelisk every once in a while. If it weren't for his rather special identity, he actually wanted to personally oversee the excavation. "This time, it's all mine," Ling Han said.
Chapter 448. Liu Yang's continuous barrage of seals was only a feint to make Ling Han focus his attention on him, creating the best opportunity for the frost-clouded leopard to attack. As expected, he succeeded. Han Lin, you're indeed very strong, but you're too arrogant. Liu Yang sneered, and was about to throw a punch at the ice pillar. Freezing Ling Han with ice, the latter's defense would naturally fall to rock bottom, so how could he block his full power strike? Ka, but at this moment, countless cracks appeared on the ice pillar, like a spiderweb. Ling Han was about to break free. What? Liu Yang was instantly so shocked that even his hair almost stood on end. He was hit by the frost-clouded leopard's powerful attack, yet he was able to break free so quickly. Impossible. One had to know that the frost-clouded leopard was in the 5th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, and after being sealed in ice, it almost lost its battle prowess. It could be imagined how terrifying the power of this attack was. That was what he thought, but Liu Yang still threw a punch. This was the only chance he had to win. Pang, his fist hadn't hit, but the icicle suddenly exploded. Countless fragments of ice shot out, and actually sent Liu Yang flying. Ah! He spat out a mouthful of blood, and there were many wounds on his body, all of which were cut, and pierced by the ice. Liu Yang was, after all, an elite-ranked second on the prodigy roll, so he still managed to stop himself from being thrown off the stage by this attack. He panted heavily, his eyes filled with disbelief. He used an ultimate attack, but it was almost completely useless. Ling Han walked out slowly, and said indifferently, "Your beast pet is a king tier, right? Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to possess a mystical power." That's right, that ice seal just now wasn't a casual attack, but the frost-clouded leopard's unique ability to seal ice, which was why it almost lost its battle prowess after a single attack. However, its bloodline isn't pure, so it can't continue after releasing a mystical power. Ling Han continued, "That's true. Otherwise, why would a king-level demonic beast become a human's pet beast? Unless, of course, they were extremely lucky and adopted a demonic beast with the bloodline of a king-level demonic beast. But even so, when the demonic beast's intelligence was developed, there was a possibility that it would turn on its master. This was because a king-level demonic beast was too proud and would not allow itself to be a slave. Just like the kings of the human race, they could be defeated, but they would never become someone's servant." Liu Yang was speechless. Although he still had many trump cards that he had yet to use, the attack just now was his strongest trump card. If even this move was useless, then what else could he do? He sighed dejectedly and said, "I admit defeat." Originally, he had been brimming with confidence, thinking that he was only inferior to Yang Junhao in terms of cultivation level. As long as their cultivation levels were the same, he and the frost-clouded leopard would definitely be able to defeat Yang Junhao if they joined forces. However, Ling Han was only in the 1st layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, yet easily defeated him, dealing a great blow to his confidence. Seeing him depart dejectedly, Ling Han only smiled faintly. If the other could pull himself together again, there would still be a place for him among the elites in the future, but if he continued to be depressed like this, he might create a history of people on the prodigy roll being unable to break through to the flower blossom tier. This had nothing to do with him. Ling Han merely swept a thought over and walked off the stage. He specially observed the masked man's battle. Like him, the masked man's battle style was extremely simple, but every punch and palm strike was just right. If one only needed to use 30% of their strength to finish the battle, he definitely wouldn't need to use 30.5. This was not only an extremely precise control of power, but also a complete control of battle, knowing how much power was needed to achieve the desired effect. This person was extremely terrifying. Ling Han felt that this person was somewhat familiar, but this kind of battle style was something he had never seen before. In terms of control of power, it was possible that he was even superior to the Sword Emperor and Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden in his last life. Such a monster actually appeared in the spiritual pedestal tier. In the 4th round, Ling Han's opponent was Yang Junhao. He had just beaten the 2nd on the prodigy roll, and now he was fighting the 1st. What a coincidence. The two ascended the stage. Yang Junhao revealed a smile, and said, I was just thinking that the prodigy battle wasn't satisfying enough, and now I've finally met someone worthy of fighting. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, weren't you having fun playing with a 5 or 6-year-old little girl? Yang Junhao's expression instantly darkened. He prided himself on being invincible among those of the same age level, yet was brutally beaten by Hu Niu. Fortunately, she didn't use her mouth, or else he would very likely suffer a calamity and suffer a defeat at her hands, something he would take as a grudge. She really touched his sore spot, and he immediately became angry. Come, since you're lacking discipline, I'll give you a beating. Ling Han crooked his finger. Han Lin, you're so confident. When you're defeated by me later, won't you want to cry? Yang Junhao sneered. Ling Han smiled and directly flashed out. So fast. This thought only flashed through Yang Junhao's mind when he felt a pain in his lower abdomen, and his whole person was sent flying. With a pang, he fell onto the ground, his mind blank. Hua, the whole place was in an uproar. The dignified first rank of the prodigy role was actually knocked off the tournament stage without even being able to fight back. This was really too humiliating. Lu Yang had at least exchanged a few moves, and had even sealed Ling Han in ice, giving him a chance of victory, but what about Yang Junhao? Yang Junhao himself hadn't reacted. He had too many ultimate moves that he hadn't used, and this time, he didn't need to use spirit tools. His battle prowess could even reach the level of half a step into the flower blossom tier. But with a single punch, he was sent flying off the stage. I refuse to accept this. His face twitched. This was too humiliating. The first on the prodigy roll was actually sent flying with a single punch. How could he face others if it was spread out? He wanted to return to the stage, but was coldly stopped by the referee, who even rolled his eyes at him, causing him to almost explode in anger. Chapter 449. A very decisive person. Ling Han nodded. Even if Yu Kunlun could defeat him, the masked man could easily defeat Chao Tianyi, so he could also easily defeat Yu Kunlun. Thus, the masked man simply chose to retreat bravely to save his face. If this matter spread out, it would obviously affect Yu Kunlun's reputation, but it was better than being defeated in public, not to mention he might even gain a crushing defeat. Ling Han looked towards the masked man, and the masked man also looked towards him. Green light intertwined in his eyes, exuding a terrifying pressure. Even Ling Han, who had a sliver of heaven-tier divine sense, felt fear. How was this possible? Could it be that this was a shattering void-tier elite that disguised himself to participate in the tournament? But if he really was in the shattering void tier, so what if he directly snatched the key? Not to mention in the North region, even in the Middle State, no one dared to say anything. So strange. Ling Han and the masked man didn't ask to rest, and directly faced each other. Have I seen you before? Ling Han asked with a smile, beginning to fish for information. The masked man also grinned, and said, I do know you, though you've changed your face. Ling Han was astonished. His disguise had actually been seen through by someone else. Come, make your move. Let me see how much your strength has grown. The masked man said. Ling Han clenched his fists, not daring to have the slightest bit of carelessness. The masked man completely exposed him, and there was a bone-deep evil that made him extremely disgusted. Wait. A thought flashed in Ling Han's mind, and he said, Yen, you finally remembered, the masked man said with a smile. Yen Tianzhao, no wonder he gave him an extremely evil feeling. Ling Han had only felt such a shocking evil from this person, as if he was the embodiment of evil. He didn't expect that in the year since leaving Rain Country, his strength had also improved greatly. Although he was a bit freakish at the time, he was far from being as shocking as he was now. Neither of them called out the other's real name. This was you keeping my secret, and I'll keep yours. Then let's fight, Ling Han said confidently. He believed that if he fought in the same realm, he would be able to sweep through all opponents. As you wish. Yan Tianzhao's figure flickered, and he charged towards Ling Han. Peng, 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 peng. The two of them exchanged more than 10 moves in an instant. Ling Han was astonished. Yan Tianzhao's strength was actually not the slightest bit weaker than his, and in terms of the details of battle, the other party had even reached an astonishing level. It was as if he was born a warrior, and could completely rely on his instincts to battle. There were clearly a few times when he had fallen into a dangerous situation, but Yan Tianzhao had used his elbows to block, his waist to bump, and his shoulders to block. Although he did not seem to have a proper technique, not only had he managed to resolve the danger, he had even created quite a bit of trouble for Ling Han. If it were not for the fact that Ling Han had cultivated the body of Iron Sheet, he might really have suffered a great loss. However, the body of Iron Sheet was not omnipotent. After Yan Tianzhao discovered his astonishing defense, he turned his palm into a finger, and attacked Ling Han's eyes. Every move was swift and fierce, causing Ling Han to be in an extremely sorry state. When battling with others, Ling Han would always be able to gain the upper hand in the overall situation. The divine sense of the heaven tier allowed him to predict his opponent's attacks, and from there, react in advance. It could be said that in the instant his opponent made a move, victory was already within his grasp. However, when fighting against Yan Tianzhao, it was the complete opposite. His every move was predicted by his opponent, and thus, although Ling Han had an astonishing battle prowess, he was gradually being suppressed by the other party. Ling Han suddenly recalled that the other party's eyes had once exuded a pressure that made even him palpitate. Could it be that Yan Tianzhao was like him, and had been possessed by an elite? Moreover, the other party was even stronger, and was very possibly an elite of the Shattering Void tier? Only then would the pressure of the other party's divine sense be above his, and suppress him in terms of battle prowess. Interesting, Ling Han not only did not feel the slightest bit of fear, but instead felt a burning fighting spirit. He practically had no opponent in the spiritual pedestal tier, but the sudden appearance of a great enemy caused his blood to boil. Come, let's fight to our heart's content. He laughed loudly, and used War Elephant Fist. 7 dragons appeared, crushing towards Yan Tianzhao. Yan Tianzhao could not help but be slightly shocked, and blurted out, "Earth Dragon Palace's technique?" Earth Dragon Palace. A thought flashed through Ling Han's mind. War Elephant Fist came from Na Lan too, and Na Lan too came from the Earth Dragon sect. Ever since the Azura Demon Emperor recognized the 3 styles of black origin as a martial arts technique of the Heaven's Sword Palace, Ling Han became more attentive. Perhaps those great clans in the Middle State all had connections to the realm of immortals, and Zi Shuexian of the Blue Thunder sect even had clansmen from the realm of immortals. Thus, when Yan Tianzhao said the words Earth Dragon Palace, he definitely did not believe that the other had made a mistake, saying Earth Dragon sect as Earth Dragon Palace. Hiss, could this guy also have connections to the realm of immortals? Yan Tianzhao had been sealed by someone when he was 5 years old, and had been in a state of deep sleep. He only awoke after receiving his alchemical pill, and within a few days, he had soared to the spiritual ocean tier, even displaying strange abilities. If it was said that Yan Tianzhao had been possessed by a deity, then everything could be explained. A pressure that could make even his heart palpitate, and that meticulous battle ability, who on earth are you? Ling Han asked solemnly. Oh, I'd also like to ask, who are you? Yan Tianzhao laughed, yet his fists continued to strike out. There was obviously not a single flash of fist chi, but the power of the fists he struck out was extremely domineering, as if Ling Han had voluntarily come forward to receive a beating, showing his absolute control over the battle. As expected. Ling Han nodded internally. The other had definitely been possessed by an elite, and it was extremely likely that it was a divine spirit. At that time, someone had already made a mistake, but they had only sealed Yan Tianzhao and forced him into a deep sleep. However, after being released by him, this soul could finally completely control this body, and display terrifying battle prowess. Sir, you've come from the realm of immortals, right? Ling Han asked in a low voice as he exchanged blows with the other. This was too shocking, and he did not want others to hear it. Realm of Immortals. Yan Tianzhao laughed loudly and similarly lowered his voice, saying, a frog at the bottom of a well, not knowing even when death is at hand. How laughable. What do you mean by that? Ling Han asked. Perhaps in a few dozen years, or perhaps in 100 years, you'll know, Yan Tianzhao said coldly. Now, defeat me. I swear to obtain the treasures in the 12 heaven mystery realms. Huh. Ling Han also laughed coldly. Since that's the case, then all the more I can't let you succeed. You can't stop me. Yan Tianzhao said proudly. Now, I can display close to 100% of my battle prowess. How could you possibly be a match for me? Don't forget, I'm only in the first layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, Ling Han said with a smile. This was his greatest advantage. Yan Tianzhao's gaze involuntarily turned cold. Although he had complete control over this body and could display 100% of his battle prowess, he was similarly limited by the power of this body, and battle prowess was not unlimited. Ling Han was already so fierce now, and if he reached the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, then his battle prowess would definitely increase by a few levels, and he would be even harder to deal with. Then I can't let you live. A green pentagram lit up in Yan Tianzhao's eyes. He raised his hands, and instantly, multiple green threads spread out. Pang! It was at this moment that someone dashed into the great arena, and cried out in shock, Lord Clan Head, the key has been snatched away by a strange person hiding in a coffin. Chapter 450. Key. Hearing these two words, Ling Han and Yan Tianzhao stopped fighting at the same time. They subconsciously thought that this was the secret key to open the Sagittarius Palace Hall. As expected, the clan leader of the Jiang clan immediately stood up, revealing a shocked and angry expression as he shouted, How is this possible? The key was hidden so well, how could it be found? Reporting to the clan leader, that person said, trembling with fear. That person used some secret technique to control the fourth elder, making him personally take out the key and give it to that person, then escaped on the coffin. Rong Huan Xianling Han immediately confirmed in his heart that although there could be other members of the Thousand Corpse sect in the extreme Yang city, only Rong Huan Xian dared to openly show his identity as a member of the Thousand Corpse sect. With the 3 lives corpse casket, one could be so willful. Without another word, Ling Han and Yan Tianzhao directly turned and left. With a few leaps, they had already jumped to the highest point of the great arena. Their gazes swept over, and they had already arrived at the place of the commotion. They both used their movement techniques to pursue. Since the key was stolen, what was the point of fighting for a spouse? Xiao, Hunyou also used her extreme speed to catch up. She glanced at Yan Tianzhao and opened her mouth slightly, revealing her snow-white teeth, appearing very hostile. Yan Tianzhao's eyes actually revealed a hint of fear, and he involuntarily kept a distance from Hunyou. Azura Demon Emperor could possess Rong Huan Xian, and Yan Tianzhao was suspected to be possessed by a god. If Hunyou's body also had a terrifying god's will, it wouldn't be strange. However, Ling Han was still very doubtful. Was there such a god that was cruel but ate as his duty, and also acted cute in passing? The little girl's strangeness was in her spirit base, which seemed to be completely different from Rong Huan Xian and Yan Tianzhao. What a headache, there were too many monsters in this world. Ling Han didn't care about it for now. The current priority was to stop Rong Huan Xian and snatch the key. Thankfully, the 3 lives corpse casket's defense was incredibly strong, but its speed was not ridiculously fast. At least, Ling Han and Yan Tianzhao were closing the distance between them, not to mention Hunyou. However, she did not go all out and kept following by Ling Han's side. There was no lack of flower blossom tier elites in the extreme Yang city, and though Ling Han had not seen any of them yet, he believed that there would still be ultimate elites of the spiritual infant tier. Rong Huan Xian had so casually snatched the key, could he really let him escape so easily? However, at least until now, not a single flower blossom tier elite had made a move. It was simple. If he snatched the key back in the city, there was a high possibility that he would be pressured to return it to the Jiang family. However, once they were out of the city, they would be in the wilderness. If you found something in the wilderness, it would definitely belong to you. There was no such thing as losing the owner. This was an unspoken rule. Thus, everyone was waiting. When Rong Huanxian left the city, he would definitely draw out a large number of elites. It wouldn't be strange for Flower Blossom tier or even Spiritual Infant tier elites to make a move. The Three Lives Corpse casket opened a path, and no one could obstruct it. In only about 10 minutes, Rong Huanxian had already left the city. Instantly, figures appeared one after another, no longer holding back. Careful, this casket is a treasure of the Thousand Corpse sect, and its power is extremely extraordinary, someone warned. It was a Flower Blossom tier elite that appeared in the Dark Demon Forest, and personally witnessed the terror of the Three Lives Corpse casket. Quite a few people nodded, but even more people were disdainful. Even if it was a level 10 spirit tool, it still depended on who was using it. Since you guys are so cowardly, I'll take this key. Someone made a move, slapping towards the Three Lives Corpse casket. Idiot, many people said inwardly. Paw! The palm slapped onto the Three Lives Corpse casket, and instantly, vein-like patterns lit up on the lid of the casket, turning into a skeleton soldier that appeared and pierced towards that person with a spear. That person was greatly shocked, and hurriedly used the intent of martial art to build a defense around his body. However, this spear directly pierced through. Pooh! It pierced through his head, and drops of blood rolled down from the tip of the spear. His luck was not as good as that Flower Blossom tier elite in the Dark Demon Forest, and he was directly killed by a spear through his head. Paw! The skeleton soldier automatically disappeared, and that Flower Blossom tier corpse lost its support, immediately falling from the sky and landing on the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. Ha 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 ha, actually gifted me with the material of a Flower Blossom tier corpse soldier, thanks. Rong Huanxian's voice sounded from within the casket. The casket lid opened, and a hand reached out, quickly dragging that Flower Blossom tier corpse inside. Pang! The casket lid closed again. This scene made everyone speechless. This casket was going to defy the natural order. What to do? Flower Blossom tier warriors were completely helpless, so they could only rely on Spiritual Infant tier warriors. An elite completely enveloped in purple divine light appeared. A terrifying aura circulated, and even Spiritual Pedestal tier warriors would have to grovel under his feet without the slightest bit of resistance. Spiritual Infant tier elite. However, Ling Han, Hun Yo, and Yen Tianzhao were not ordinary people, so they were not the slightest bit afraid of this kind of aura and pressure. Yen Tianzhao had the protection of the Three Lives Corpse casket, so he was similarly unafraid. Moreover, this kind of aura was not invincible. As long as it was a king tier that had formed 7 flashes of qi, they would have the right to resist, and the influence they would receive would be extremely small. It's the Purple Point Old Man. Seeing this elite appear, the Flower Blossom tier warriors all cried out in surprise. Though everyone knew that this would alarm a Spiritual Infant tier elite, when such an elite appeared, it still caused quite a commotion. As expected, the inheritance of the 12 Heaven Mystery Realms would move even Spiritual Infant tier elites. Though the Purple Point Old Man might not have the right to enter the Mystery Realms, he had an extremely large number of disciples and grand disciples, and there would definitely be 1 or 2 outstanding ones. As long as they could obtain the inheritance, wouldn't that mean that the Purple Point Old Man had obtained it? The Purple Point Old Man's figure descended, and he pressed a palm towards the Three Lives Corpse casket. Ha 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 ha, damn old man, you also want to seek death? Rong Huanxian laughed loudly, appearing extremely arrogant. This caused everyone to be displeased. He was merely a junior of the Spiritual Pedestal tier, and just because he had a level 10 spirit tool, he dared to look down on them. This was also because the North region lacked top-notch elites. Otherwise, if you went to the middle state to try, even if you had this tortoise shell, you would definitely be instantly dragged out and killed. The Purple Point Old Man pressed his palm down, and instantly, the Three Lives Corpse casket reacted. Another skeleton soldier appeared, slashing towards him. Pang, pang, pang. Both sides instantly engaged in a fierce battle. The Purple Point Old Man did not descend, but the skeleton soldier could not be destroyed either. Instantly, a stalemate appeared. But the skeleton soldier was only an attack formed by the 3 lives corpse casket. If it was destroyed, then so be it. They could just launch a second attack. Could the Purple Point Old Man withstand such exhaustion? Purple Point Old Man, I'll lend you a hand. Another spiritual infant tier elite appeared, and directly slashed out with his sword. Hong, a flash of sword chi formed a divine sword that was as long as 3,000 meters, and ruthlessly slashed out. Peng, the divine sword slashed onto the coffin, instantly stirring up layers of ripples of light. Woo! Rong Huanxian released a tragic cry. Though he had not been directly hit, the shock from the power still caused him great pain. Chapter 451. Peng, Peng. However, although Small Saber King deflected the arrow, he was struck by Hunyo's small fist. Even if he was awe-inspiring, he was still struck staggering, spitting out a mouthful of blood, and his whole body started to tremble. How could the might of lightning be underestimated? Damn it! His eyes were murderous. This mystical power should have been his, and the stronger Hunyo's current battle prowess was, the more jealous he was. He wanted nothing more than to immediately split open Hunyo's head and extract the Thunderclap 9th Heaven mystical power. Very good, you guys have successfully enraged me. Small Saber King gripped his saber. Wang, the saber chi on his whole body overflowed, and there was black light intertwining. The air of despair intertwined between heaven and earth, making one have the urge to commit suicide. Ling Han's heart trembled. The path that Small Saber King walked was the saber of despair. When the saber slashed out, it would steal one's mind and make one feel despair, even forgetting to parry. Under the influence of this saber intent, it was difficult for Zhu Xian to control the boat. The golden boat continuously swayed left and right as if it was about to fall. Xian. Ling Han shouted loudly, like the evening drum and morning bell, thought-provoking. Zhu Xian immediately came back to her senses. She also possessed the aptitude of a king among martial artists, and began to walk on her own path. Even if she wasn't as freakish as Ling Han, she wouldn't be completely controlled by someone else's saber intent. In the beginning, she just wasn't on guard, but now, with Ling Han's shout, she immediately recovered herself. All of you, die! Small Saber King brandished his saber and slashed. Saber ray swept out, reaching a length of 300 meters with astonishing might. Hunyo was agile, and as her small body swayed, she attacked Small Saber King again. Meanwhile, Ling Han took out another arrow and knocked it on the bow, yet held it in place without releasing it. An attack that was about to be released yet to be released was the greatest threat. Small Saber King couldn't help but keep most of his attention on Ling Han, because that arrow from Ling Han was indeed enough to pose a threat to him, so he had to be on guard. However, if Ling Han shot this arrow, then he'd have nothing to fear even if he slashed it down with a single saber strike. Yet, Ling Han didn't shoot, leaving him on tenterhooks and having to be distracted. Hunyo took the chance to attack. As she brandished her small fists, lightning intertwined. Small Saber King snorted, shook off Hunyo, and charged towards Ling Han. This calamity had to be eliminated first, or else he wouldn't be able to unleash 100% of his battle prowess. Peng, Peng, Hunyo's fists landed on Small Saber King's back, but only set off a series of lightning. His defense was completely activated, and he could actually take Hunyo's attack head-on without being injured. Small Saber King brandished his saber and charged towards Ling Han. Damn it, you dare ignore Nyo! Hunyo was furious. Her small body once again turned into lightning, and with another flash, she appeared behind Small Saber King. She directly rode on his neck, opened her small mouth, and bit at him. Ah! Small Saber King screamed. He'd clearly opened up his defense completely, and even a high-level spiritual infant-tier cultivator couldn't possibly break through such a defense, but encountering Hunyo's sharp teeth, it became a decoration. A spurt of blood flew out, and it was actually bright silver, showing this person's peculiarity. Damn it! Small Saber King brandished his saber and slashed behind him. Hunyo once again flashed, turning into lightning and escaping. Her battle instincts were too shocking. Small Saber King! Ling Han shouted fiercely, and shot out another arrow. You really think I can't do anything to you guys? Small Saber King gave a long howl, and his whole body activated with a silver radiance. His whole person also turned silver, as if he'd become a statue, and his battle prowess rose rapidly. Pang, his saber slashed, and directly shattered the arrow into pieces. Not good. Ling Han's expression changed in shock, and he shouted loudly, Hunyo, come back quickly. Small Saber King was in the peak stage of the spiritual infant tier in the first place, and even had 1 foot in the deity transformation tier. Now, it was unknown whether he'd circulated some kind of secret technique or activated his bloodline, but he'd actually directly crossed into the deity transformation tier. This made him completely invincible. Hunyo was quick-witted, and with a flash of lightning, she'd already appeared on the golden ship. Let's go! Ling Han shouted loudly, and continued to knock the bow, shooting toward Small Saber King. However, after shooting 3 arrows consecutively, he also felt like collapsing. He couldn't even stand steadily, and his figure swayed. This arrow slightly stopped Small Saber King. After all, it was a combination of 2 mystical powers, Annihilating Dragon Star Arrow and Eye of Truth, and even used 7th tier rare metal, so it couldn't be taken lightly no matter what. However, for Small Saber King, who'd already crossed into the deity transformation tier, this was only a matter of making him swing his saber once more. Zhu Xian hurriedly controlled the ship and swiftly shot away. Can you escape? Small Saber King sneered. Pang! A fist suddenly smashed down out of thin air, and just happened to block the golden ship's flight path. Pang! A terrifying power surged, and the spiritual infant tier level shield actually instantly shattered, and the entire ship was directly blown apart. At this time, a peculiar human figure appeared in the sky, as if made of transparent crystal. Light rays refracted irregularly on his body, and one had to look carefully to discover the existence of such a person. Previously, he'd been hiding in the sky as if he didn't exist at all, but now, he suddenly launched an attack, and smashed the golden ship with a single punch. Small Saber King caught up, but he was immediately astonished, because although the fragments danced in the air, there weren't any remains of Ling Han and the others. Teleported away. He mumbled. That peculiar person stood behind him, and was about the same height as him, yet it was as if he didn't exist. If it weren't for the refraction of light, he really could completely disappear from his line of sight. Diamond Puppet. This was the highest level puppet in the ancient dynasty's treasure trove, possessing deity transformation tier battle prowess. The special nature of the material made it seem as if it could turn invisible, and it possessed considerable intelligence, practically a natural-born killer. Chapter 452. Pingsword light splashed, all landing on the 3 lives corpse casket. This was a level 10 spirit tool, and very easily blocked Ling Han's attack. Thankfully, the demon birth sword was also a level 10 spirit tool, so it didn't draw the 3 lives corpse casket's counterattack. However, the 3 lives corpse casket was already covering Rong Huanxian. As long as he was inside, then Rong Huanxian would be in an invincible state again. Ling Han, you can't do anything to me. Rong Huanxian sneered. As long as Hunyo was here, wouldn't he be able to confirm Ling Han's identity? Wait, where's that little girl? It was her turn just now, why did she disappear all of a sudden? Ah! He suddenly let out a scream, and turned his head to look. Hunyo's little head had actually appeared in the green net, and there was still blood dripping from the corner of her mouth. She had shockingly bitten off 2 of his fingers, one of which was wearing a spatial ring. No! He immediately shouted. The spatial ring wasn't worth much, but the problem was that all his belongings were hidden inside, including the key that he'd snatched from the Jiang clan. Hee hee. Hunyo grinned. She and Ling Han cooperated well. One attacked from the front, drawing his attention, while the other launched a sneak attack from the side. With the destructive power of 20 stars of the flower blossom tier, she bit through the green net and also bit off 2 of Rong Huanxian's fingers. She retreated hurriedly. Peng, the 3 lives corpse casket closed, swallowing Rong Huanxian inside. Kill them all. Rong Huanxian's hoarse voice came from inside. Losing 2 fingers was fine. As long as the heart wasn't damaged, corpse chi could regrow all organs, but the spatial ring had to be taken back. Instantly, that corpse soldier stared at Ling Han. Yen Tianzhao also shook his right hand and put away the green net. He looked at Ling Han, his eyes filled with coldness, and said coldly, "Hand over that key, and I'll spare your life." Ling Han casually wiped away the divine sense that Rong Huanxian had placed on the spatial ring. Sure enough, there was a silver key inside. He didn't know what material it was made of, but it was as thick as a child's arm. He smiled faintly, and directly stored the spatial ring into the black tower. Then, he dodged to the side, not clashing head-on with the corpse soldier. It was meaningless. "Oh, the battle between you and I wasn't decided in the first place, and I just wanted to have a good fight. You forced me to use my full strength. Only death awaits you," Yen Tianzhao said coldly. With a wave of his right hand, a ray of green light shot out. It actually transformed into a pair of extremely thin wings, and like a peerless divine blade, it slashed towards Ling Han. Ling Han unsheathed his sword. Ding! When the long sword struck the wings, intense sparks actually appeared. Upon closer inspection, those weren't ordinary sparks, but vein-like patterns. What a terrifying Yen Tianzhao! The martial art willpower he unleashed could actually contend against a 10th-tier spiritual tool. But at this moment, that corpse soldier waved a claw at Yen Tianzhao. The order it received was to kill everyone, which naturally included Yen Tianzhao. At first, Yen Tianzhao was a bit further away, so it naturally prioritized attacking Ling Han. However, Yen Tianzhao suddenly charged so close to it, so it naturally didn't mind adding a hit in passing. Fuck! Yen Tianzhao cursed. No matter how glorious his last life was, he was now only in the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, so he definitely couldn't ignore a flower blossom tier corpse soldier, even if it hadn't been completely refined. He waved another attack, but this time, it was aimed at the corpse soldier. Ling Han charged forward. The demon birth sword swung out, and 10 flashes of sword chi appeared. The 4-season sword technique was already used, and the concept fluctuated as if time was passing. This time, it became him and the corpse soldier attacking Yen Tianzhao together. Yen Tianzhao was suspected to have been possessed by a god, and his battle prowess was shockingly terrifying. He raised his hand and kicked, easily dispersing all of the corpse soldiers and Ling Han's attacks. However, the moment Ling Han got close, the corpse soldier turned to attack Ling Han, causing the scene to become extremely chaotic. In the 3-way battle royale, Ling Han, who had obtained the key, naturally became the main target of attack. However, the corpse soldier was a typical, two-faced person. When it could attack Ling Han, it would attack Ling Han, and if Ling Han was far away, it wouldn't stay idle either. It would also attack Yen Tianzhao in passing, making Yen Tianzhao feel very gloomy. This ally was really too unreliable. Hunyo kept clapping her hands on the sidelines. She was full of confidence in Ling Han. After a period of time of accumulating power, Ling Han's sword swung out, and the mysterious 3000 was instantly used. 1,000 flashes of sword light. The 4-season sword technique was only a black-grade high-level martial arts technique, but spiritual pedestal tier cultivators could already use earth-grade martial arts techniques, and the mysterious 3000 was an existence that surpassed heaven-grade martial arts techniques. Its might was only limited by the martial artist's understanding of the sword. Suddenly jumping from black grade to surpassing heaven grade, the power of the sword technique naturally increased drastically. Shio, 1,000 flashes of sword light interweaved, and every flash of sword light was equivalent to Ling Han's full power attack. How shocking was this power? Moreover, this was struck with a level 10 spirit tool. Yan Tianzhao immediately grunted and spread his arms. Flashes of green lines spread out. This time, it didn't form a net but was far denser than a net. It was actually a pair of wings formed by vein-like patterns, protecting him within. The corpse soldier, however, charged forward stupidly, bearing the majority of the might of the sword light. Pang! The sword light shattered, causing a huge explosion that was extremely terrifying. When the sword light completely dispersed, the corpse soldier was already riddled with holes, and its left arm was also severed. However, it still pounced towards Ling Han, completely unafraid of death. Yan Tianzhao was much better. The wings of light that protected him only had a few feathers scattered, and he was completely unharmed. This was naturally because the majority of the attack was taken by the corpse soldier. It had to be said that merely based on the toughness of the physique, the corpse soldier could really compare with rare metals of the same level, and could even compare with body of iron sheet. Furthermore, this was also because this corpse soldier had not been completely refined. It could only be said to be above the level of a level 2 silver armored corpse, and had not reached the level of a level 3 silver armored corpse. Otherwise, even the mysterious 3000 would not be able to cause any damage. After all, this was a sword technique that dealt mass damage, and 10,000 techniques returned to 1 was the true killing move that could break through the toughness. This is the sword technique of Heaven's Sword Palace. Yan Tianzhao exclaimed, frowning slightly. No, there is a Heaven's Sword sect here. Could it be that you are a disciple there? No, you are born in Rain Country, so you should not be related to Heaven's Sword sect. Could it be that you are the reincarnation of some great elite of Heaven's Sword Palace here? His first sentence was actually spoken to himself, but the latter sentence was actually directed at Ling Han. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, I have no relationship with Heaven's Sword Palace. But you, since you know of Heaven's Sword Palace, you must be someone from the realm of immortals, right? Realm of immortals. Yan Tianzhao was startled for a moment, and then he suddenly laughed loudly, his face filled with disdain. Ignorant people of the lower realm, impossibly stupid. To tell you the truth, I am indeed Yan Tianzhao. It's just that when I was young, I accidentally triggered a tool that contained the memories of an immortal, so I was slightly affected. Yet Ling Han suddenly understood. Things like memories could not be touched randomly. The reason why he was unwilling to use the soul-searching technique was because after touching another person's memories, they would fuse together with his own memories. Once there were too many of these memories, he would not be able to distinguish which was his own and which was the other person's. It would definitely affect him, and even his personality would change greatly. Yan Tianzhao was only 5 years old at that time, and his own personality had not formed at all. How could he possibly bear the memories of an immortal's entire life? Naturally, his personality changed greatly, and he was practically a copy of that immortal's. He became incredibly evil, and that was why he was sealed away. Chapter 453. Fuck. From the Three Lives corpse casket came Rong Huanxian's cursing. He was really unlucky. First, he was possessed by the god-level Azura demon emperor, and now he encountered a monster that obtained the memories of a god. Moreover, Ling Han was very likely related to the ancient times. Yan Tianzhao didn't pay any attention to him. In his eyes, Rong Huanxian was naturally a minor character among minor characters, not worth mentioning at all. He looked at Ling Han and said, "My sincerity is enough, right? Ling Han, how about this? I don't need you to give me that key, but I want to enter the Sagittarius Palace Hall with you and take something from inside." Seeing Ling Han frown, he immediately waved his hand and said, "Don't worry, this thing is absolutely useless to you." He paused, then said, "I can also kill the brat in the coffin for you. Other people can't do anything to the Three Lives corpse casket, but it's useless against me. I can drag him out, fuck." Rong Huanxian cursed again. If it was someone else who said this, he would naturally scoff, but Yan Tianzhao possessed the memories of a god, which was equivalent to a reincarnated god, so he might have a way to deal with the 3 lives corpse casket. Ling Han, however, cracked a smile, and said, "No." "Why?" Yan Tianzhao was practically driven mad. He had already made enough concessions, but Ling Han still refused him. Ling Han said, "The brat in the coffin. I can't kill him now, but in a few years, I'll be able to drag him out and kill him. Keeping him as a reminder is good as well. As for that key, it's obviously mine, so why should I give it to you? Moreover, even a god is so concerned about it, tsk, then all the more I can't miss it." "You!" Yan Tianzhao was furious, and instantly leapt up, charging towards Ling Han. Since the negotiation had failed, then they could only fight to the death. "Then you know the terrifying battle prowess of my peacock race," Yan Tianzhao said with a cold snort. As he waved his hands, they actually transformed into wings that were 300 meters long. They were densely woven with vein-like patterns, and they shone with resplendent light. They were incomparably terrifying. Ling Han used the mysterious 3000. He did not need to accumulate enough power. Every time, he only needed to send out 100 or so sword lights. He shattered the wings that Yan Tianzhao had sent flying towards him, turning them into shattered feathers that filled the sky. Then, they immediately turned into vein-like patterns that quickly dimmed and returned to the world. "Die! Die! Die!" Yan Tianzhao's expression became incomparably evil. As his figure rapidly spun, it was as if his entire person had turned into a gigantic peacock. His feathers fluttered, and his killing intent filled the sky. Ling Han was fearless and only used the mysterious 3000. Hundreds of sword lights soared into the sky, which was enough to resist. "Damn it, I am no longer a peacock after all, and am unable to unleash the Wisdom King's secret technique to its fullest." Yan Tianzhao roared angrily, but the madness in his eyes did not diminish. Instead, it increased. "Give me my key." Hong, his entire body actually blazed with green flames, distorting the space. Ling Han immediately felt a hint of dizziness. "There's poison," he thought. He hurriedly took out a golden flower of the stone and swallowed it, then headed towards Hunyou. Thankfully, the little girl was far away, and was not engulfed by the flames. However, after taking a golden flower of the stone, Ling Han only felt that his dizziness was somewhat under control, but it still did not improve. Obviously, the golden flower of the stone was unable to cure this fire poison, and could only be put aside for now. Hiss, what kind of poison was this? Even the golden flower of the stone that was said to be able to cure all poisons couldn't do anything to it. However, Ling Han's fighting spirit did not diminish, but instead rose. He gripped the demon birth sword, and said, "Yan Tianzhao, take a strike from me." Hong, the thunder battle armor activated, forming a barrier that isolated the green flames. At this moment, the corpse soldiers were no longer of much use. They had been heavily wounded by Ling Han's mysterious 3000 and Yan Tianzhao's green flames, so their threat could be completely ignored. Thus, Ling Han only needed to focus on dealing with Yan Tianzhao. With a flick of his sword, he once again activated the mysterious 3000. Instantly, 1,000 flashes of sword light surged, covering the sky and covering the earth. Yan Tianzhao hurriedly spread out his green wings and wrapped them around himself. The sword light attacked, filling the sky with the radiance of vein-like patterns, bombarding his figure into continuously retreating. The sword light was being destroyed, and the wings in front of him that were protecting him were also being destroyed. When the sword light had been reduced to 200 flashes, the green wings were also completely shattered. Poo, piu, 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 the sword light wreaked havoc, and instantly, fresh blood sprayed wildly. Ling Han was secretly shocked. This guy really could not be underestimated. If he had not pushed his sword chi from 7 flashes to 9 flashes, even the mysterious 3000 would not have been able to break through the opponent's defense. Yan Tianzhao roared furiously as he spat out blood. This time, his injuries were quite severe. But at this crucial moment, pang, the Three Lives corpse casket opened, and Rong Huanxian rushed out, slashing at Yen Tianzhao with his saber. This was the moment when Yen Tianzhao was at his weakest, and how could he have imagined that Rong Huanxian would actually attack him? Instantly, he was hit. Pooh, green blood splattered, and he was actually cut in half at the waist, cut into two halves. You actually attacked me? Yen Tianzhao's face was filled with disbelief. Nonsense, you said yourself that you could drag me out of the Three Lives corpse casket, so if I don't kill you, who else would I kill? Rong Huanxian sneered. In comparison, at least he still had the ability to protect himself in front of Ling Han, and even if he could not obtain the treasures in the 12 Heaven Mystery Realms, he would not suffer any loss. It was not his in the first place, so he naturally did not feel any pain. Yen Tianzhao was gloomy. He did not think that the ants in his eyes would actually heavily injure him one after the other. However, would he die so easily? Both halves of his body actually moved. One began to run with its two legs, while the other supported itself with its two hands. Then, the two halves of his upper body used its two arms to leap, overlapping with his lower body as if they could be glued together. When the mystery realm opens, I will definitely stop you, and you. He first said to Ling Han, then pointed at the Three Lives corpse casket. The next time, I will definitely turn you into a corpse. After saying so, he broke into a run. Hong, two green wings of light actually grew out from his back, and with a flap, he instantly broke through the air. He didn't even die. Ling Han stood with his sword in his hand. Yen Tianzhao could completely be seen as the reincarnation of an ancient god, possessing a shocking amount of secret arts. He actually did not die after being cut in half. Next time, would he have to blow up his heart or head? Ling Han, don't be too proud. I will go get a gold-armored corpse, and next time, I will definitely take your life. Rong Huanxian also threw down some pleasantries, obviously wanting to slip away. I know, go, Ling Han said impatiently. You! Rong Huanxian snorted. He was extremely displeased with Ling Han's attitude, as if he was an insignificant nobody. He swore that he would definitely make Ling Han regret it. Hong, the Three Lives corpse casket slid, and Rong Huanxian also swaggered off. Ling Han, however, sank into deep thought. Yen Tianzhao's situation, could he be considered the reincarnation of a god from his previous life, or was he still himself? On the other hand, what kind of situation did he belong to? Was it only the memories of his previous life that had been transferred onto this current body? This made him somewhat at a loss. Ling Han. Hunyo leapt over and pulled Ling Han's hand, instantly causing Ling Han to smile, driving away the bewilderment in his heart. He was himself. He was neither the alchemy emperor of his previous life, nor the useless youth of this life, but a body that combined the two. He had both advantages and disadvantages, a living person. This was already enough. Come, let's go back, Ling Han said with a smile. N. Hunyo nodded forcefully. Chapter 454. On the way back to the Extreme Yang City, Ling Han removed his disguise, and when he arrived at the Extreme Yang City, he naturally recovered his identity as Forget-Not and the owner of the Alchemist King Pavilion. He disappeared for 10 days, and Lu Yutong and the others were all very worried. Thankfully, Ling Han finally returned, allowing them to relax. Ling Han went to the Spirit Treasures Pavilion again, thinking that Ing Hong would at least get him the 9-leaf black Ganoderma this time, right? I'm really sorry. Ing Hong apologized the moment she saw him, causing an ominous feeling to rise up in Ling Han. As expected, he heard Ing Hong say, the stock of spirit medicine you wanted was stolen. Who did it? Ling Han's killing intent surged. This stock of spirit medicine was the key to whether Ling Dongxing could cultivate again, and for that, he would not hesitate to start a massacre. I'm not sure about the specifics, only that it was sold to a person surnamed Kong. Coincidentally, according to my investigations, He also came to the extreme Yang City, and is currently in the North Pill Pavilion, Ing Hong said. I'm really sorry. I originally already negotiated with the seller, but this person surnamed Kong should have a very powerful background to make the seller sell the spirit medicine to someone else even at the cost of offending me. I originally wanted to communicate with the person surnamed Kong to see if I could make him change hands, but before I could start, you already came running over, Ing Hong continued. Ling Han nodded, and said, still, many thanks. At least he knew the specific location of the 9-leaf black Ganoderma. Be careful. This person could make the seller reject me, so perhaps he has shocking strength or a powerful background, Ing Hong said solemnly. I understand. Ling Han stood up and left. After Ing Hong watched Ling Han's back disappear through the courtyard gates, she couldn't help but rub her chin, and say, strange, is there a great elite surnamed Kong in the North region? Ling Han headed straight for the North Pill Pavilion. Although he was an Earth-grade alchemist, and although he stayed in the extreme Yang City for many days, he really did not come to the North Pill Pavilion many times. At most, he would choose some spirit medicine seeds to enrich the space of the Black Tower. He asked the staff in the Pill Pavilion about the Kong family, but everyone shook their heads, indicating that they didn't know. Thinking that this person with the surname Kong might have a great background, it was normal that these low-level people didn't know about him. Ling Han decided to ask someone with a higher status. But how could ordinary people enter the important areas of the North Pill Pavilion? He was just about to reveal his identity as an Earth-grade alchemist when he glanced over and saw 3 people walking in from outside, 2 in front and 1 behind. Of the 2 people in front, one was dressed in a simple yet elegant white dress. Her black hair was like the clouds, and her face was covered with a white veil. Although there were thousands of people dressed like this in the world, there was only one person who could make people think endlessly. Zhu Xian'er. Beside her was a young man who looked about 24 or 25 years old. His cultivation was in the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, and in the North region, he could be considered a top-notch prodigy. However, a flower blossom tier elite followed behind the 2 of them. His expression was solemn as he followed closely behind. From the looks of it, this flower blossom tier elite actually seemed to be the servant of the 2 people in front of him. Ling Han knew that Zhu Xian'er definitely didn't have this kind of extravagance, so this flower blossom tier elite should be the young man's subordinate. However, even if it was the Winter Moon sect or the Beast Emperor sect, which disciple would use a flower blossom tier elite as a bodyguard or servant? Flower blossom tier elites were definitely the mainstay of a sect, and could become spiritual infant tier elites in the future. This young man had a great background. Thinking of Ing Hong's words earlier, Ling Han could almost conclude that this young man was someone with the surname Kong. Grandmaster Ling. When Zhu Xian'er saw Ling Han, it was as if she had met her savior. Her beautiful eyes immediately lit up, and she walked over with graceful steps. Do you have time? Xian'er has something to ask Grandmaster. Grandmaster. The young man instantly revealed a disdainful expression after hearing, and said, Xian'er, if you want to understand alchemy, feel free to ask me. As a black-grade high-level alchemist, I can naturally answer all your questions. This young man was actually a black-grade high-level alchemist. TSK, he really wasn't simple. No wonder he was so arrogant. However, if he was merely a black-grade high-level alchemist, he still wasn't qualified to have a flower blossom tier elite as his bodyguard, right? Ling Han turned to the young man, and said, and who are you? How dare you speak to young Master Kong with such a tone? The flower blossom tier elite immediately rebuked angrily, his eyes sharp and filled with killing intent. Flower blossom tier cultivators had left their mortal bodies, and this angry shout was naturally filled with might, capable of scaring a spiritual pedestal tier cultivator to the ground. He naturally did it on purpose. Young Master was pursuing Zhu Xian'er, but now Zhu Xian'er seemed to have a good impression of Ling Han, so he naturally had to make the latter make a fool of himself in front of Zhu Xian'er, making him lose a lot of face. But who was Ling Han? He had a sliver of heaven tier divine sense, and was also a king that formed 9 flashes of qi, so how could he be oppressed by the imposing manner? He merely picked his ears, and said, "What are you yelling for? Your ears aren't good, so you think others are also deaf? Insolence!" The flower blossom tier cultivator was furious. A mere spiritual pedestal tier cultivator actually dared to be insolent in front of him, disregarding the level of martial art? Was there still justice in this world? Zhu Xian'er hurriedly stopped him, and said seriously, "This is Ling Han, Grandmaster Ling, an Earth-grade low-level alchemist." What? The flower blossom tier cultivator's eyes instantly widened. Ling Han was only 18 or 19 years old, and already became an Earth-grade alchemist. One had to know that even a genius like young Master Kong was only black-grade high-level now. Although black-grade high-level and Earth-grade low-level were only one level apart, this one level was enough to make one despair for life, forever impossible to cross. So what if he's an Earth-grade alchemist? The young man sneered. In front of me, even an Earth-grade high-level alchemist isn't enough. Brat, get out immediately, or else I'll have you die. Ling Han didn't get angry, but instead smiled, and said leisurely, "I don't seem to have offended you in any way, right? You spoke to Xian'er without my permission, that's your crime." The young man said coldly. Zhu Xian'er, however, was annoyed, and said, "Who I speak to, what does it have to do with you? Of course it's related." The young man chuckled. "I fucked you. Since you're my woman, no man can talk to you. Otherwise, they'll be courting death. Don't speak nonsense." Zhu Xian'er rebuked angrily. Instead, that young man laughed loudly and said, "I heard that Yao Huiyu had also slept with you. After I heard that, I specially came over from the Central Plains. I just wanted to see for myself what kind of beauty could move that sword fanatic's heart. That bastard has always been against me. I can't compare to him in martial art, but I can steal his woman. Ha ha ha, I really want to see the expression on his face. Dream on." Zhu Xian'er snorted coldly. "Is that so?" The young man revealed a playful smile. "Don't you want to concoct a heaven-grade alchemical pill? There are only 2 heaven-grade alchemists in the entire Middle State, and one of them is my great-grandfather. What right do you have to have a heaven-grade alchemist concoct pills for you? Just like my Kong clan, which has been concocting pills for generations, the wealth we have accumulated is incomparably shocking. What bargaining chip can you take out to move my great-grandfather? Unless you can become my woman and let me beg great-grandfather to refine pills for you." Chapter 455. When a martial artist advanced a level, the increase in power would be 10 times, or even 100 times, but in terms of speed, it would be pretty good if it could be doubled. Thus, Ling Han cultivated a body of lightning, and his speed increased explosively by 3 times. Added with the demon fairy step, this had already surpassed the level of the spiritual infant tier, and stepped into the height of the deity transformation tier. However, running isn't an option after all. I still have to break through to the spiritual infant tier as soon as possible, and only then will I truly have the qualifications to stand against Small Saber King. Sigh, the level of martial arts in this life is really too high. If it was in my last life, with my current strength, only Sword Emperor and the others would have the qualifications to stand against me, and at least an old monster over 100 years old would be able to suppress me. Now, it's great. Geniuses under 100 years old are like bamboo shoots after a spring rain, emerging endlessly. Hee, but this will give me enough motivation. I've just formed a body of lightning, and still can't truly transform my body into lightning. However, I'm not far from this step, and at that time, my battle prowess will be even stronger. Ling Han walked to Hunyo and Zhu Xian'er's side, revealed a smile, and said, "Let's go, we should also go to Thousand Flower County to meet the prodigies of the present age." "Let's go." Hunyo jumped happily. They'd stayed here for many days, and were very bored. Unfortunately, their golden ship was destroyed by the diamond puppet, and now they didn't have any means of transportation, so they could only walk on their 2 legs. They didn't bother to find another carriage either, and just walked like that. In order to reduce trouble, they all disguised themselves. Ling Han originally wanted to disguise the three of them as husband and wife with an adorable daughter, but Hun Yo was unwilling no matter what. Thus, they could only disguise themselves as three siblings. Ling Han became a few years older, Zhu Xian'er's beautiful face was covered, and Hun Yo's face became a little flowery. Ling Han also specially circulated an ancient art. It didn't have much effect, and only made the aura he emitted become much weaker, reaching the spiritual ocean tier. In this way, if Small Saber King could still find him, then the latter really had the ability. They left Nine Cloud City and set out towards Thousand Flower County. Ling Han wasn't in a hurry. The opening of the ancient academy was only a rumor, and the actual entrance examination was still far away. At least, the information he'd heard in Nine Cloud City was that the examination date hadn't been decided yet. No matter how he thought about it, there was at least half a year's time. Otherwise, with how big the vast lands were, many people wouldn't be in a hurry to rush over. They walked leisurely, this was also cultivation, anyways. Ling Han paused slightly and turned his head to look back, only to see a cloud of dust rising behind him as a group of people quickly approached. He first thought that Small Saber King had caught up again, but immediately realized that something was wrong. These people were only in the flower blossom tier. There was a total of 7 people, and their speed was extremely fast, quickly catching up to Ling Han's group. Then, without a pause, they continued forward. Ling Han's gaze swept over, and he couldn't help but reveal an expression of surprise as he said, "Can ye?" Among the group of people, someone immediately stopped and turned around. His figure was slender, and his whole body emitted a piercingly cold saber chi, as if he was a sharp unsheathed blade. He looked at Ling Han in surprise, confusion in his gaze. It was Can Yi. After not seeing each other for a long time, he actually broke through to the flower blossom tier, and also walked his own path, becoming extremely confident. "I'm Ling Yun," Ling Han said with a smile. Hearing this name, Can Yi immediately understood that this was Ling Han, and a hint of joy instantly appeared on his face. "Can Yi, what's the matter?" a woman in red asked. She was extremely beautiful, with beautiful hair like clouds, and skin as smooth as jade. Under the sunlight, it actually glowed brilliantly, as if she was a goddess. Can Yi didn't speak yet, but Ling Han first came forward, laughed, and said, "Meeting an old friend in a foreign land, my name is Ling Yun, and I'm Kenya's fellow townsman." "Oh." The woman in red and the others all nodded. So it was just a fellow townsman. These 6 people were all dragons and phoenixes among men. Their bearing was extraordinary, and they had a kind of soaring confidence. Obviously, they came from prestigious clans. When they saw that Ling Han was only in the spiritual ocean tier, they naturally wouldn't give him a second look. If it weren't for the fact that Can Yi was unwilling to leave, they would definitely have already turned around and left. This kind of person didn't belong to the same world as them at all. Young Master Ling. Meanwhile, Can Yi was very excited. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "You call me Young Master Ling, so isn't that asking me to call you Young Master Yi as well? I'm not as thick-skinned as you." Can Yi understood that Ling Han didn't want to be ostentatious, so he also smiled, and no longer insisted on calling Ling Han Young Master. The woman in red and the others, however, were slightly indignant. What right did a mere spiritual ocean tier have to stand on equal footing with them? Calling you Young Master, and you actually became cocky and pretentious, where did your confidence come from? Can Yi, we'd better set off quickly. I've already received definite news that the Restore Heaven Academy will officially open in half a year's time. If we go earlier, we might be able to find out the contents of the test, and be better prepared, one person urged. "Oh, there's still half a year before the Restore Heaven Academy opens," Ling Han interrupted. That was fine too. He could take advantage of this gap to go search for the whereabouts of the Boundless Mountain. "What does it have to do with you?" A pretty boy looked at Ling Han impatiently, revealing a look of disdain. Could it be that this brat also wanted to go to the Restore Heaven Academy? What a joke. He was already in his 20s, and still only had the cultivation of the spiritual ocean tier. If he could enter the Restore Heaven Academy like this, then wouldn't that be a joke? They accepted all the elites of the world, geniuses among geniuses, and only people like them had the right to enter. Cho Zifei, what do you mean by this? Can Yi walked menacingly towards the pretty boy, and unhesitatingly drew his long saber, aiming it at that person. Can Yi, for such a piece of trash, you actually drew your saber against this young master? The pretty boy called Cho Zifei's face was filled with astonishment. He had completely never thought that Kan Yi would actually turn hostile against him for a mere spiritual ocean tier. Apologize. Kan Yi said coldly, his eyes like a saber, his killing intent fully revealed. In his eyes, Ling Han was his benefactor, and more so the idol he worshipped. Cho Zifei actually dared to look down on Ling Han, which naturally made his killing intent burn. Kan Yi, your talent isn't bad, that's why I befriended you. Don't think that you're really qualified to be on equal footing with this young master. Cho Zifei's expression also turned cold. Young people were the most proud and arrogant, so he obviously wouldn't lower his head. Forget it, we're all friends, why make things unpleasant? A man came out to smooth things over, and said with a smile, since we're all going to the Restore Heaven Academy, then let's go together. Cho Zifei immediately wanted to object that he actually had to travel with such a minor character, but before he could voice his objection, he was stopped by a man who whispered in his ear, "Isn't it quite interesting to toy with this brat?" When he heard that, he immediately gave up on the idea of objecting, and merely looked coldly at Ling Han, thinking that he would definitely embarrass this guy enough, and then he would dejectedly leave on his own. Although Kan Yi didn't want to let it go, seeing that Ling Han also shook his head, he put away the saber, and the situation eased up. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 456. Elder Sher was a consecrator of the North Pill Pavilion, and had been standing guard here for almost 100 years. Because he had not gone to the middle state when he was young, it was even more impossible for him to go when he was old. Passing through the barrier would not only weaken his cultivation, it would even shake the source of his life. He no longer had any lofty aspirations, and only wanted to enjoy the rest of his life here. But Tang Zhu Ming's words caused his heart to thump with excitement. The 8th layer of martial art cultivation technique and the Heaven's Heart Void Pill strengthened his foundation, which gave him hope of breaking through to the deity transformation tier. If he could advance into the deity transformation tier, he could gain another 200 years of lifespan. Who wouldn't want to live a few more years? What more 200 years? That was twice the lifespan of an ordinary person. Old Sher, your heart is in a mess. A calm voice rang out. It sounded very clear, but if one listened carefully, it was filled with vicissitudes of life. This was the true boss of the North Pill Pavilion, the Earth-grade mid-level alchemist Gong Yang Tai Sunday. At the same time, he was also an elite of the spiritual infant tier. He actually had hope of breaking through to the deity transformation tier, but he had spent too much energy on alchemy. Now, his qi and blood were dried up, and he no longer had the strength to break through to a higher cultivation level. Elder Sher humphed, and said, "Brother Gong Yang, you are dedicated to alchemy, and this old man admires you greatly, but this may be this old man's only hope of breaking through, so please do not stop me." He, Old Sher, you are a consecrator of my North Pill Pavilion. You took the money of my alchemist society, yet turned around and tried to kill my alchemist. There is no such thing in this world. Gong Yang Tai Sun's voice rang out again. Then, Brother Gong Yang, this old man will resign from the position of consecrator of the North Pill Pavilion. Elder Sher was very straightforward. How could a person who could cultivate to the spiritual infant tier be someone who would worry about personal gains and losses? Gong Yang Tai Sun sighed, and said, "It was just an empty promise, and you believed it?" He wouldn't deceive this old man, Elder Sher said very confidently. Is that so? Guang Tai Sun shook his head. Old Sher, you really have been clever all your life, yet you are muddle-headed for a moment. With the barrier of the region wall in the way, would you be able to chase him all the way to the middle state? Moreover, spiritual infant tier cultivators can only be considered elites in the middle state, but not ultimate elites. Eldershire couldn't help but feel stifled. In the North region, there was indeed no one who dared to deceive him, but what if this brat surnamed Kong ran back to the middle state and didn't come back? Moreover, he was the junior of a heaven-grade alchemist, and if he really went into hiding, would he dare to go to his residence to demand repayment? Don't worry, Eldershire. I, Tang Zhu Ming, hereby swear that I will definitely fulfill my promise. Otherwise, I will be struck by lightning, said Tang Zhu Ming hurriedly. He was a spoiled brat, he was arrogant, and he was also domineering, but he was definitely not an idiot. Otherwise, his cultivation could be raised through alchemical pills, but the status of a black-grade high-level alchemist was something he had obtained through his own abilities and knowledge. Old Man Shirt cackled strangely and said, Brother Ram, I don't want to be your enemy, so please don't be my enemy. Ha, all of you think that you've got me for sure, Ling Han said. He strode back, the thunder battle armor on his body emitting rings of lightning, making him appear incomparably mighty. You're dead for sure today. Tang Zhu Ming said coldly.
What he was most proficient in was using his status and the various resources in his hands to crush others. Beautiful women would undress for him, prodigies would lower their heads, and his enemies would naturally die without a place to be buried. Ling Han smiled calmly, and said, Isn't it just an old ancestor of a heaven-grade alchemist? What's there to be so arrogant about? Brother Ram, please make some preparations for me, I want to take the heaven-grade alchemist test. Hearing Ling Han address Ram Tai's son as brother, many people stuck out their tongues. This youth was really not afraid of death. Could it be that he didn't know that in the North Pill Pavilion, only Ram Tai's son was capable of stopping Eldershire? You, a mere Earth-grade low-level alchemist, was a level lower than a middle-level Earth-grade alchemist, and this level might require a few dozen years to cross, or even a lifetime without any hope of crossing, yet you actually dared to address Ram Tai's son as brother? You really had no respect for your elders. But when they heard Ling Han's last sentence, everyone was instantly petrified. This guy actually wanted to get certified as a heaven-grade alchemist? Fuck. This was completely impossible. Putting aside whether or not Ling Han had such ability, heaven-grade materials could only be found in the middle state. Thus, even if Kong Zisher came, it would be useless. At most, he would only be certified as a high-level Earth-grade alchemist. Don't worry, I have my own materials, Ling Han said calmly. In the Alchemist Society, no one was allowed to stop an alchemist from getting certified as a high-level alchemist, and even heaven-grade alchemists were no exception. Thus, Ram Tai's son was stunned for a moment, and then said, Prepare an alchemy room. Eldershire also appeared slightly surprised, and was even more hesitant. However, as long as Ram Tai's son protected Ling Han, then he would definitely not be able to do anything to Ling Han in the North Pill Pavilion. That was because there was a supreme great formation in the Alchemist Society, and when fully activated, it could even display the might of a deity transformation tier elite. This was also one of the reasons why the Alchemist Society was able to stand tall. In the North region, the strongest elite was only in the spiritual infant tier, so how could they stand against the great formation of a deity transformation tier elite? Thankfully, Eldershire was also familiar with the workings of this great formation. Thus, he had the confidence to keep his life under the great formation, but if he still wanted to kill Ling Han, that would really be a pipe dream. Thus, he only bickered with Ram Tai's son, hoping that the latter would take a step back. I'm dying of laughter. A mere Earth-grade low-level alchemist actually wants to be certified as a heaven-grade alchemist. Tang Zhu Ming held his stomach and laughed loudly.
However, the others all detested his arrogance, and only Zhuo Feng gave him face, laughing along with him. All right, come with me. Ram Tai's son took a deep look at Ling Han. This young man was really too young. When the Star Brilliance Palace Hall had sent the request for certification, he had been in complete disbelief, and because of that, he had a very deep impression of Ling Han. By now, he had naturally already accepted the fact that Ling Han was an Earth-grade alchemist, but when he suddenly heard Ling Han say that he wanted to be certified as a heaven-grade alchemist, he still cursed inwardly. You're only an earth-grade low-level alchemist, so how far away are you from becoming a heaven-grade alchemist? Not level 3, but infinitely far. Just like how a black-grade high-level alchemist had a 99% chance of not being able to advance to earth-grade in their lifetime, an earth-grade high-level alchemist had a 99% chance of not being able to advance to heaven-grade. There were only 2 heaven-grade alchemists in the whole vast lands, okay? Ling Han had obviously been provoked into saying that he wanted to be certified as a heaven-grade alchemist. No matter what, he was doing it out of spite, so how could he possibly succeed? It was not an exaggeration to say that even Kong Zisher and Nongbo Xian had to calm their minds and fast for 3 to 4 days before they could refine a heaven-grade pill. Was it something that they could refine just because they wanted to? He really wanted to stop Ling Han so that he wouldn't waste heaven-grade materials, but there was nothing he could do. Any alchemist had the right to certify as a high-level alchemist, and even he could not take away this right. The elixir room was ready. As Ling Han strode over, the entire North Pill Pavilion was in an uproar. Someone wants to be certified as a heaven-grade alchemist. This was an inconceivable thing in the North region, because though there had been heaven-grade alchemists in the history of the North region, all of them had completed their breakthrough and certification in the Middle State, and had never returned to the North region since then. Now, there was actually someone who wanted to be certified as a heaven-grade alchemist in the North Pill Pavilion. Fuck, he definitely had to go. Chapter 457. Ling Han indeed decided to certify as a heaven-grade alchemist on a spur of the moment. An 18-year-old heaven-grade alchemist was really too dazzling, and he hadn't built his own force. For example, if the Winter Moon sect and the Beast Emperor sect secretly abducted him and imprisoned him to force him to concoct pills, what would he do? On the surface, no one would dare harm a heaven-grade alchemist, but in private, hee. After all, there were only 2 heaven-grade alchemists in the entire vast lands. Ling Han had the Black Tower, which was indeed enough to protect himself, but if the secret of the Black Tower was leaked, he might encounter more trouble. Didn't the Thousand Corpse sect have their eyes on him now? However, for the sake of his father, Ling Han chose to act impulsively. He had to obtain the 9-leaf black Ganoderma and concoct the Restore Spirit pill. The problem now was, could he concoct a heaven-grade medicinal pill? After all, he only had the cultivation of the spiritual pedestal tier, and theoretically, he could at most concoct a medium-level earth-grade medicinal pill. With the strange fire, high-level earth-grade was no problem, but heaven-grade was uncertain. He could only hope that small fire was drilled badly enough in the Black Tower, and his strength improved greatly. Otherwise, he really might fail. Face was secondary, the key was that he couldn't snatch back the 9-leaf black Ganoderma. Ling Han put away his random thoughts, and took out a stalk of Spirit Heart Heaven Spring Bamboo from the Black Tower. This was a kind of spirit medicine that could be concocted into the most common Return Origin pill to replenish origin power. However, Spirit Heart Heaven Spring Bamboo could be concocted into a high-level Return Origin pill. A 10-year-old could instantly restore 1/10 of a spiritual infant tier warrior's origin power, a 100-year-old could be effective for deity transformation tier warriors, and a 1,000-year-old could be effective for heaven tier warriors. Ling Han had obtained a 100-year-old Spirit Heart Heaven Spring Bamboo in the Devil Sky Mystery Realm, and after a year of cultivation by the Black Tower, it was now a 1,000-year-old, and could be concocted into the highest-level Return Origin pill. For heaven-tier warriors, it was obviously a heaven-grade medicinal pill. Although heaven-grade medicinal pills were also divided into high, medium, and low-grade, because the grade was too high, heaven-grade low-grade was directly called heaven-grade, heaven-grade medium-grade was saint-grade, and heaven-grade high-grade was god-grade. Saint-grade alchemical pills could be effective on shattering void-tier cultivators, and immortal-grade alchemical pills truly did not belong to this world. In his previous life, Ling Han was able to concoct saint-grade elixirs and had some knowledge of god-grade elixirs as well. He had even found some substitutes and managed to concoct half god-grade elixirs, which proved that his talent in alchemy was unparalleled. The title of Alchemy Emperor wasn't obtained through flattery, but through genuine ability and knowledge. The two heaven-grade alchemists in the middle state should be heaven-grade low-level alchemists. There was a huge gap in the inheritance of alchemy. This had absolutely nothing to do with the prosperity of the martial art environment, so it was completely impossible for them to become saint-grade. Although the heaven-grade return origin pill was the most ordinary and trashy heaven-grade alchemical pill, no matter how ordinary or trashy it was still a heaven-grade alchemical pill. It was something that no earth-grade alchemist could concoct, and it was enough for him to pass the certification. More importantly, he did not have any other heaven-grade materials. Ling Han began to sort out the materials. The Spirit Heart Heaven Spring Bamboo was the main ingredient, but some supplementary materials were also needed. He manipulated it like moving clouds and flowing water, causing the alchemists outside to stare in shock. So the sorting of materials could be done so elegantly, and even filled with beauty. Zhu Xian'er's heart was thumping wildly. Although she was called the #1 beauty of the North region and the strongest of the younger generation, to talk to a heaven-grade alchemist was really a fantasy. There were only 2 heaven-grade alchemists in the whole middle state, and this status was practically comparable to shattering void tier elites. Did she have the right to talk to a shattering void tier elite? Of course not. Thus, Tang Zuming's threat and temptation were actually very practical. To request the 2 heaven-grade alchemists to concoct alchemical pills for him, the most effective method was to ask their descendants for help. Otherwise, he could only wait until Zhu Xian'er grew to a level that even heaven-grade alchemists would have to give her face. Shattering void tier. Putting aside whether Zhu Xian'er could reach the shattering void tier, even if she could, that would be a matter of when. But if Ling Han could become a heaven-grade alchemist, Zhu Xian'er's heart could not help thumping wildly. She should be considered as Ling Han's friend, right? Since they were friends, then it should not be too difficult for her to help him, right? At that moment, she was incomparably hoping that Ling Han could succeed. Meanwhile, Tang Zuming smirked coldly. There were a total of 27 Earth-grade high-level alchemists in the middle state, and they had been charging towards the threshold of heaven-grade alchemist for 100 years, but in the end, no one had been able to cross over. Why? This step was too difficult. An 18-year-old youngster also wanted to succeed, he was really too naive. However, he was still rather astonished by Ling Han's techniques, because he was also a genius of alchemy. He was already a black-grade high-level alchemist at the age of 20, which was enough to show how extraordinary he was. Ling Han's techniques were too experienced, causing him to feel ashamed of his inferiority. He even had the thought of secretly learning from Ling Han, but looking at those dazzling movements, he completely did not know where to start secretly learning from. There had initially been some clamor outside, but at this moment, it had become absolutely silent. They were all quietly watching Ling Han. That kind of charm actually caused them to feel a strong resonance, as if something was about to surge out from within their bodies. After sorting out the ingredients, Ling Han once again entered the stage of purifying the medicinal effects. That astonishing technique naturally caused everyone to be shocked and dazed again. A few people even cried out in surprise, but they were repeatedly rolled their eyes at by others. The most important segment had arrived, pill concoction. No matter how pleasing to the eye one's choice of ingredients was, no matter how exquisite the purification of medicinal effects was, if one was unable to concoct the alchemical pill, everything would be meaningless. Ling Han focused his mind and calmed his heart, summoning the strange fire, and thought, "Small fire, it's yours now." Hong, a crimson flame suddenly ignited, and if one looked closely, there was actually a small ball of purple in the center of the flame, appearing very unusual. Ling Han was surprised. Small fire was indeed very different now. Compared to the beginning, small fire had swallowed another ball of strange fire, and its power had definitely increased greatly, but the greater change should have come from the improvement of the Black Tower, which had truly allowed it to be reborn. Heaven-grade alchemical pill, there was hope. The flames raged, and the light of the fire soared to the skies. No way, with such a fierce fire right from the start, isn't he afraid of losing control? That's right, the furnace could explode at any moment. Immediately, many people began to shake their heads. Ling Han's skill in sorting out ingredients and purification made them all sigh in admiration, but his level of alchemical pill concoction, it was really a bit pathetic. This kind of person could actually become an Earth-grade alchemist, right? Though many of the older elites did not say anything, there was also disappointment in their eyes. At first, they had thought that Ling Han was aggressive and brimming with confidence, and they had really thought that he had some confidence. Who would have thought that he was only putting on a brave front? He was only a youngster, so why did he mysteriously have confidence in him? Truly laughable. The furnace fire was still blazing, shooting straight to the roof, forcing Ling Han to activate the thunder battle armor to resist such high temperature. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, time passed very quickly. How long has it been? Why hasn't the furnace exploded yet? That's right, it's been at least 3 hours, and it should have exploded long ago. Could it be that there is hope of success? Impossible. I'm guessing that the ingredients he used are not heaven-grade at all, and is completely fake alchemical pill concoction. Hey, he wouldn't be so reckless, right? Everyone discussed animatedly, and Tang Zuming simply laughed loudly. How could a heaven-grade alchemical pill be so easy to concoct? It had to be that Ling Han had already failed long ago, and was just unwilling to admit defeat, stubbornly trying to save face.
What he lacked was the ability to stimulate the extreme temperature of the fire. Apart from this, he naturally had nothing to fear. He moved his 10 fingers as nimbly as if he was playing a zither. That was called easy, that was called smooth. Vein-like patterns appeared one by one, and were adjusted by him one by one before being sent back into the furnace. The vein-like patterns corresponded to the changes in the medicinal effects, and under his adjustments, they produced a fusion, developing in the direction he hoped for. Sometimes, Ling Han even closed his eyes, as if he had returned to his previous life. Heaven-rank medicinal pills were nothing, and saint-rank medicinal pills were just a so-so. With Ling Han's mastery of alchemy in his previous life, as long as he was given real god-rank materials, he might be able to concoct god-rank medicinal pills. Hey, are my eyes playing tricks on me? Why did it seem like he closed his eyes just now? I felt it too. Fuck, is this guy a freak? He's concocting heaven-rank medicinal pills in such a carefree manner. Everyone cried out in surprise, really frightened. Ling Han's movements became more and more skillful, and he knew every step like the back of his hand. His fingers seemed to have a mind of their own, playing with the characteristics of the various materials in the palm of his hand, relaxed and happy. As the deadline of 3 days approached, the vein-like patterns that came out from the furnace became more and more numerous. Merely one look was enough to make an Earth-grade alchemist's face turn green, but Ling Han was completely unconcerned. The speed at which his hands moved also increased, methodically, too wonderful for words. Tang Zuming had already recovered, and when he saw this scene, his expression involuntarily darkened. Even if Ling Han failed in the next step, this level of skill was really close to heaven rank. An 18-year-old pseudo-heaven-grade alchemist, this was really too frightening. Finally, every single vein-like pattern was pressed back into the furnace by Ling Han, and not a single one came out again. The time was almost up, and the end of the 3rd day was approaching. Hong, a dark cloud suddenly appeared in the clear sky without any warning, and within it, lightning flashed, crackling chaotically. According to the legends, when a heaven-grade medicinal pill is concocted, a lightning tribulation will descend, preventing it from leaving the furnace. This means that Ling Han has really concocted a heaven-grade medicinal pill, or else how could he possibly attract a lightning tribulation? But this is also the most difficult step to cross. As long as the medicinal pill concocted does not reach a certain standard, it will turn into ashes under the lightning tribulation. But if it does, it will absorb the power of heaven's way in the lightning tribulation, and only then will it truly possess the effects of heaven grade.
Even if a deity transformation tier cultivator eats a heaven-grade medicinal pill, his body will still explode and die, completely unable to withstand the power of heaven's way. But will we be affected by the lightning tribulation? Everyone's expression darkened slightly. They had never experienced a lightning tribulation before, not even once. They had only heard of such a thing. Retreat, retreat. Meanwhile, the expression of the Earth-grade middle-level alchemist changed drastically. As an Earth-grade middle-level alchemist, he naturally knew that a heaven-grade medicinal pill would attract a lightning tribulation when it left the furnace. That was no joke. Everyone hurriedly fled in all directions. At this stage, everyone was sure that what Ling Han had concocted was a heaven-grade medicinal pill, or else it would be impossible to attract a lightning tribulation. Then, as long as the medicinal pill survived the lightning tribulation, Ling Han would become a genuine heaven-grade alchemist, and even if he could not survive it, he would still be qualified to be called a pseudo-heaven-grade alchemist. Elder Shi and Zhua Gaofeng's expressions were ashen. Though one of them was in the spiritual infant tier, and the other was in the flower blossom tier, if they really fought against a heaven-grade alchemist, they would be torn to shreds at any moment. How many people begged a heaven-grade alchemist to concoct pills, and among them, there was no lack of heaven tier and deity transformation tier elites. In front of such elites, what did spiritual infant tier cultivators count for? Even if there were restrictions obstructing them, and deity transformation tier cultivators coming over would greatly damage their vitality, as long as Ling Han made a call, it was guaranteed that all the spiritual infant tier cultivators in the North region would obey him. There was no need for a heaven-grade alchemist, pseudo-heaven-grade alchemist was enough, because spiritual infant tier cultivators did not need heaven-grade medicinal pills, and earth-grade middle level was enough. Chapter 459. Xiao, she was like a flash of lightning, so fast that it surpassed the limits of what the naked eye could capture. At least, it was extremely hard for spiritual infant tier cultivators to capture. Yang Yingshi had only just broken through to the spiritual infant tier, and added with the fact that who would be wary of a 7 or 8-year-old little girl, she didn't have the slightest bit of attention on Hunyo. She only felt a blur before her eyes, and Hunyo had already dashed in front of her. She cried out inwardly, and still wanted to leap back, but Hunyo had already shot out a punch, smashing it onto her chin. Peng, Yang Yingshi's entire person was sent flying, and the terrifying impact hit her, causing her to be knocked unconscious. Hunyo's feet shot out, and with an even faster speed, she caught up to her. Riding on her shoulders, she pressed down on her head with both hands, and twisted. Ka, the crisp sound of bones breaking was heard. Having lost the defense of origin power, the physique of a spiritual infant tier cultivator was extremely weak, and her head was forcibly plucked off by Hunyo. Yang Yingshi instantly woke up again. Her eyes opened, revealing a terrified expression, and her headless body was flailing about. The chi of a spiritual infant tier cultivator was very long, and after her head was plucked off, she actually didn't die on the spot. Moreover, if her head was reattached at this time, she could still recover. Hunyo landed, and with a casual wave of her hand, that head was thrown out by her. Yang Yingshi's body hurriedly ran over, blood continuously spurting out from her severed neck. However, she only ran a dozen or so steps before crashing onto the ground. Her limbs twitched a few more times, and she was forever still. A dignified spiritual infant tier cultivator's head was easily plucked off by a little girl, and killed on the spot. The whole scene was silent. Qin Lianyu, He Lan Yun, Chou Zifei, and the others, which one of them didn't know Hunyo? They'd even had a meal with her. But now, their legs were all trembling, and they had the urge to faint. This little girl was too terrifying. Qin Lianyu recalled that yesterday, the little girl was still very displeased, asking if Ling Han could kill her. At the time, it naturally sounded like a joke, but now, the little girl was clearly serious. Unknowingly, she actually took a detour in front of the gates of hell, making her instantly overflow with cold sweat. She couldn't help but feel an incomparable chill. Ah! Hu Qingfang and Yang Yingyun finally came back to their senses, and hurriedly escaped into the carriage. "Hurry, hurry!" he urged the four beautiful women to drive the carriage away. "You want to kill the cute Nyo Nyo, Nyo is angry." Hunyo broke into a run and chased. She turned into lightning, arriving above the carriage in a flash, and threw a punch. Wang, a screen of light spread out, blocking her fist. After all, this was at the level of the spiritual infant tier, and the little girl was only at the high stage of the flower blossom tier, so her fist couldn't break it. Only then did Hu Qingfang calm down slightly, and said sternly, "Ha ha ha, come, want to kill this young master, you still have to cultivate for 10 million years." Hunyo was furious, and opened her small mouth to bite at the screen of light. Kacha, even this screen of light couldn't resist Hunyo's teeth, and instantly shattered. However, this was activated by origin crystals, and the shattered screen of light immediately began to repair itself, as if in a race with Hunyo's destruction. In a short period of time, the two sides seemed to be evenly matched. However, Hu Qingfang was scared out of his wits again, and hurriedly called out again, "Hurry, hurry, hurry!" The four beautiful women hurriedly urged the carriage to speed into the sky. The carriage quickly disappeared into the horizon. Qin Lianyu and the others still didn't move, dumbstruck. The impact they suffered was too great. After a while, with a flash of lightning, Hunyo had already returned. She pouted in displeasure, put her hands on her hips, and said, "Not fun, they ran away, you're already fierce enough, killing a spiritual infant tier elite with one strike and breaking open a spiritual infant tier's defense with one bite. If this were to be known, it could shock the whole world." At this time, everyone seemed to have been struck by an alarm, and they all moved towards Hunyo. This time, there wasn't the slightest bit of contempt in their eyes. This was a little demon king, enough to kill them. "After a fight, I'm hungry." Hunyo stuck to Ling Han, and said fawningly, "Can Nyo eat another piece of meat?" "No, you've already eaten enough today." Ling Han shook his head, and definitely wouldn't allow it. "Eat another small piece, just a small piece," Hunyo said coquettishly. "No means no." Ling Han was very determined. "Stingy, Nyo is going to turn bad." Hunyo pouted, and became angry. Everyone broke out in cold sweat for Ling Han. This little demon king had forcibly snapped the head of a spiritual infant tier elite, and you actually dared to defy her? Weren't you afraid that she'd flip out and twist your neck off to use it as a wine pot? But what surprised everyone was that Hunyo actually didn't make a big fuss. Not long after, she stuck to Ling Han again, and begged pitifully. When she finally got a piece of jerky, she was extremely happy. This was practically inconceivable. They were all tempted. So this little girl was a glutton, and could be bribed with food. If they could kidnap this little girl back, then she now had the ability to kill a low-level spiritual infant tier elite. When she grew up to 10 or 20 years old, how strong would she be? They'd make a killing. They hurriedly took out some jerky to seduce Hunyo, thinking that Ling Han was really an idiot. With such a strong lackey, he naturally had to win her over, but he actually couldn't bear to part with a few pieces of meat. Hadn't he heard of the old saying, "If you don't give up your child, you can't catch the wolf"? This didn't need your child, and just a few pieces of meat would do. But how could they possibly be able to move Hunyo? They were all kicked back by the little girl. If it wasn't for the fact that she had somewhat restrained her murderous nature, she would definitely kill all of them that dared to be so annoying. Qin Lianyu, however, focused her beautiful eyes on Ling Han. She recalled Yang Yingyun's inexplicable consecutive stumbles earlier, which was an inconceivable thing on an expert. Now, combined with Hunyo's freakishness, she had a bold conjecture. If it wasn't for Ling Han also possessing terrifying strength, he would be able to restrain this savage little girl. "Ugly, you're staring at Nyo's Ling Han, are you having some bad thoughts?" Chapter 460. Forget Not had set another record. Previously, there were 2 people on the prodigy roll working in the restaurant. This had already caused a great commotion, because the people on the prodigy roll would definitely break through to the flower blossom tier in the future. But now, not only was there a flower blossom tier elite willing to be a waiter, there was even a spiritual infant tier elite who did not hesitate to do something like serving dishes and tea. That was the spiritual infant tier, an existence that stood at the pinnacle of martial art in the North region. Now, who else dares to make trouble in Forget Not? Even the Thousand Corpse sect would have to consider whether or not they would lose everything, and suffer a double loss. Not only these 2, Tang Zuming also obediently came over to work, and his identity was also very quickly made clear. He was a black-grade high-level alchemist, and was more so a direct descendant of Kong Zishe, one of the 2 great heaven-grade alchemists in the Middle State. When they heard this news, everyone couldn't help but exclaim in shock. This was even more sensational than a spiritual infant tier elite coming to work as a waiter. What kind of status did young Master Kong have? It could be said that he could do whatever he wanted in the 3 sects of the valley, and even spiritual infant tier elites would have to lower their heads, but now? He obediently became a waiter. I wipe, yet Ling Han was completely uninterested in all this. At first, he had wanted to immediately return to Rain Country, but the 12 Heaven Mystery Realms were about to open, and he had also obtained the key to the Sagittarius Palace Hall. If he missed this opportunity, he would have to wait another 100 years. After much consideration, he decided to concoct the Restore Spirit Pill first and have someone send it back to Rain Country so that Ling Dongxing could recover his spirit base first. Then, when he came out from the Mystery Realm, he would return home. Moreover, since he had regained his identity as a heaven-grade alchemist, he naturally couldn't waste it. He immediately wrote a letter and had someone send it to the Winter Moon sect, requesting them to release his mother. Naturally, he would not say that Yu Hongchang was his mother. It was inevitable that people like the Ao clan would think of using Yu Hongchang to control him. He only demanded them to release her, bring her to the Extreme Yang City, and send her to the North Pill Pavilion to stay there first. He did not give a reason at all. So what? I'm a heaven-grade alchemist, I'm just that willful, bite me then. From the moment the 12 Heaven Mystery Realms appeared in the void, it would take a total of 1 month for them to be able to enter. Now, more than 10 days had passed. In another 10 days, they would open up completely. However, in the past 10 days, Ling Han was extremely vexed. The alchemists of the North Pill Pavilion all viewed him as a figurine. All of them were extremely fanatical, and would come to pay their respects every day. Even if they couldn't see him, it didn't matter. They would definitely kneel and pay their respects outside. They had already regarded Ling Han as a kind of faith, a totem. With so many people coming to pay their respects, it was naturally impossible to hide the news. Only then did the people of the Extreme Yang City know that the boss of Forget Not and Alchemy King Pavilion was actually a newly advanced heaven-grade alchemist. No wonder so many people with high status ran to work there, no wonder Dan King Hall dared to boast like this. Could a heaven-grade alchemist not be called a king? For example, Ji Derong and Shui Guqing no longer regarded the fact that they had worked in Forget Not as a disgrace. On the contrary, this had become their glory. You guys, the 2 of us are the first martial artists to work in Forget Not, even before those spiritual infant tier and flower blossom tier cultivators. In terms of seniority, the 2 of them had to call them senior brothers. Ling Han was actually quite free. He had already concocted the Restore Spirit Pill, and specially asked Lu Jitong to make a trip. With an Earth-grade low-level alchemist taking care of him by his side, Ling Dongxing's recovery would definitely not be a problem. Gongsun Taiyang even personally made a trip to the Winter Moon sect. With an Earth-grade mid-level alchemist taking care of him, he did not believe that the Winter Moon sect would dare to delay and not release him. He spent every day studying the Tiandu Thunder Star formation. By drawing parallels, he felt that it would advance his sword arts. Young Master Han, Miss Zhu Xian'er requests an audience. Ling Han was currently studying the formation in the courtyard when Zhu Wujiu knocked on the door and said in a low voice. Ling Han hesitated slightly, then said, "Let her in." "Yes." Zhu Wujiu agreed and left. Actually, if it were any other person, he definitely would not come in to inform, but Zhu Xian'er was the #1 beauty of the North region. He sincerely hoped that she could become Ling Han's companion. Only the #1 beauty of the North region was worthy of a person like Ling Han. After a while, there was a light knock on the courtyard door again, then it opened and 2 people walked in. Zhu Xian'er and Zhu Longxing. The current Zhu Longxing did not have the slightest bit of arrogance, and could not help but lower his head, looking very obedient. Xian'er pays her respects to Grandmaster Ling. Zhu Xian'er bowed, her white dress fluttering like a beautiful flower blooming. Zhu Longxing hurriedly bowed as well, and said, "Greetings, young Master Han." Ling Han raised his hand, and said, "What is it?" He had no time to waste. "Grandmaster Ling, can you concoct the subduing tiger heavenly luck pill for Xian'er?" Zhu Xian'er looked at Ling Han with a hopeful gaze. "Sure." Ling Han agreed readily. "As long as you can get the ingredients, I will give you a friendly price. A level 9 spirit tool as payment is enough, 10 level 8 spirit tools are also fine, but if it's a level 7 spirit tool, then at least 1,000. Zhu Xian'er's face paled. Even if she was the #1 beauty of the North region, if she really sold herself, would she be able to get a level 9 spirit tool? Just joking. "No matter what, we are friends, so just get the ingredients," Ling Han said with a smile. Zhu Xian'er breathed a sigh of relief, but there was still a troubled expression on her face. Although the cost of concocting the pill was waived, the subduing tiger heavenly luck pill required Samadhi heaven-grade ingredients, which was not much cheaper than a level 9 spirit tool. How could she, a mere spiritual pedestal tier cultivator, obtain them? "Grandmaster Ling, you are a heaven-grade alchemist, so you should have a way to get the main Samadhi ingredient, right?" she asked probingly. Ling Han humphed, and said, "Have you been spoiled rotten? What relationship do I have with you? Why should I help you? You are indeed quite good-looking, but that's all there is to it. Don't take everyone in this world for fools." When Zhu Xian'er was reprimanded like this, tears instantly flowed from her eyes. She had never felt that it was fortunate that she was so beautiful. If it were not for the fact that she had outstanding talent in martial art, she would definitely have long since become someone else's plaything. But when faced with such a powerful spoiled brat like Tang Zuming, she also felt powerless, because the latter could easily take hold of her pulse, and could even use forceful methods to obtain her body. Not everyone was as gentlemanly as Yao Huiyu. In the North region, there was indeed no one who dared to do anything to her, but the vast lands did not only consist of the North region. Grandmaster Ling. She looked pitifully at Ling Han, her beautiful eyes filled with pity. Even a heart of stone would soften. However, Ling Han's willpower of martial art was even harder than steel. He did not soften in the slightest, and only looked coldly at this genius beauty. Zhu Xian'er gritted her teeth, and said, "Xian'er knows what to do." She actually turned around and left. Ling Han, however, was a bit puzzled. What did she know? But who cared? Why haven't you left yet? He swept a glance at Zhu Longxing, brother-in-law. Zhu Longxing moved closer, his face full of flattery. "Pooh," Ling Han instantly spat out a mouthful of water all over his face. Chapter 461. Cough, cough. Ling Han coughed continuously, looked at Zhu Longxing, and said, "Who are you calling brother-in-law?" My sister is so beautiful, and brother-in-law, you are so wise and mighty. If my sister doesn't marry you, who else will she marry? You two are definitely a match made in heaven, and there's no one more compatible." Zhu Longxing came up to curry favor. "Nonsense." Ling Han glared at him. However, Zhu Longxing wasn't afraid at all, still full of smiles, and said, "Brother-in-law, you haven't seen my sister's appearance, but if you have, you'll definitely like my sister. She's so beautiful that you'll be enchanted with one look." Ling Han looked at him with a strange expression. Was this guy Zhu Xian'er's younger brother, or was he her pimp? Thinking about it, Zhu Xian'er was also quite pitiful. Aside from having to constantly run about for the sake of her teacher who was injured, she also had such a worrisome younger brother who wholeheartedly wanted to marry her off to an influential person so that she could shelter him from the sun and rain. Ling Han was impatient and pointed a finger. "Brother-in-law, what are you doing?" Zhu Longxing didn't understand. Ling Han cracked a smile, and said, "I made you temporarily lose your ability as a man." "What ability as a man?" Zhu Longxing was also dazed, and then reacted, instantly screaming in fright. "Brother-in-law, how could you do this to me? I'm completely loyal to you, and want to marry my sister to you." Ling Han patted his shoulder, and said, "As long as you don't call me brother-in-law, I'll consider removing the seal for you." "Brother-in-law." Zhu Longxing was extremely persistent in this aspect. "You really don't want to be a man?" Ling Han was surprised. "Brother-in-law, I'll wait for you to change your mind," Zhu Longxing said confidently. He wasn't an idiot, on the contrary, he was a very smart person. Who was Ling Han? He was only 18 years old, yet he already became a heaven-grade alchemist, one of the only 3 in the whole continent, the most awesome in the North region. Moreover, his cultivation reached the spiritual pedestal tier, and in the prodigy roles test, he even blasted out battle prowess of 20 stars of the spiritual infant tier. Such a genius in both the Tao of alchemy and martial art would only appear once every several tens of thousands of years. Was there a stronger thigh than this? Once Zhu Longxing heard the news that Ling Han had become a heaven-grade alchemist, he set his sights on this brother-in-law. As long as he could become Ling Han's brother-in-law, who in this world would dare to touch a single hair on his head? The brother-in-law of a heaven-grade alchemist, wasn't that even more awesome than the sect master of the Winter Moon sect and the pavilion master of the North Pill Pavilion? Therefore, he did not mind suffering a little now. He believed that his sister's charm would definitely move Ling Han. As long as Ling Han became his brother-in-law, he wouldn't have to worry about the seal on his body that couldn't be removed. At that time, he would naturally be as lively as a dragon or a tiger, and who knew how many beauties would throw themselves at him. Enduring for a moment would bring light for a lifetime. It was naturally very easy to make a choice. Zhu Longstar stuck to Ling Han like a piece of sticky candy. No matter what he did, he couldn't get rid of it. This gave Ling Han a headache. He didn't do anything bad. He just called him brother-in-law a few times. That wasn't some kind of scolding. Ling Han sighed, and said, "How can you stop calling me brother-in-law? Brother-in-law, just marry my sister. My sister is definitely the best woman in the world. Not only is she gentle and kind, she's also the world's greatest beauty." "Brother-in-law, you won't lose out," Zhu Longxing said. Ling Han looked at Zhu Longxing, revealed a smile, and said, "Whoever says you're stupid is definitely the stupid one." Having lived 2 lives, he naturally knew what Zhu Longxing was planning. Zhu Longxing's face was filled with a humble smile, and his attitude was extremely humble. No matter what, he wouldn't miss out on this good marriage. The next day, unexpectedly, Zhu Xian'er actually went to Forget Not and took the initiative to do the errand of serving food and wine. This instantly made Forget Not, which was already causing a sensation, become even more of a focal point. The North region's greatest beauty actually became a waitress here. Forget Not, which was already packed to the brim, once again upgraded the queue. It had to be said that the effect of a beauty's attention completely surpassed that of spiritual infant tier and flower blossom tier cultivators. At least, Elder Shi and Zhuagao Feng definitely didn't attract so many customers as waitresses. Ling Han was shocked. Was this Zhu Xian'er's resolve? To be a waitress? He really didn't understand women's logic. Zhu Xian'er's charm was indescribable. In just 2 or 3 days, Zhu Wujiu, Ken Yi, and Guang Yuan became her staunch supporters. Even Lu Yutong and Li Xichan were won over by her, not treating her as an outsider at all. Zhu Longxing didn't even need to be mentioned. He completely considered himself to be her brother-in-law, his skin so thick that even a sharp arrow couldn't penetrate it. Now, only Hunyou stood on the same side as Ling Han. The little girl never had a good impression of Zhu Xian'er, and now she was even more displeased. She kept baring her little white teeth, as if she was going to pounce and take a bite. The day of the 12 Heaven Mystery Realms opening was getting closer and closer. Ling Han led everyone and set off. Zhu Xian'er naturally followed them, as if she had inherited her younger brother's thick skin, and didn't feel there was anything inappropriate at all. The place where the 12 Heaven Mystery Realms opened was 10,000 miles east of the extreme Yang city. With Ling Han's hired foot soldiers, it was about a 4-day journey. The group hired a total of 2 carriages, one for the men, and one for the women. Originally, Ling Han was definitely going with Lu Yutong and the others, but this time, because Zhu Xian'er was here, he chose to go with Ken Yi and the others because he could avoid Zhu Xian'er and use the Black Tower. On the way, they inevitably encountered robbers, but as long as Zhu Wujiu, Guang Yuan, or Ken Yi moved, it would be enough, and the mountain bandits would be easily beaten to a pulp. 4 days later, they arrived at Wugu Valley. At this time, many martial artists had already arrived and set up tents outside the valley, waiting for the mystery realm to open. This valley was very mysterious, covered by endless fog all year round. Anyone who entered would lose their way and be trapped to death inside. Only 1 month before the mystery realm opened would the fog disappear here, and the entrance to the mystery realm was deep inside the valley. Thus, it was very easy to determine whether the mystery realm opened or not. They just had to send someone to guard the valley entrance and observe if the fog dissipated. Fairy Zhu, when Zhu Xian'er got off the carriage, at least 100 young men rushed over, all of their eyes radiating red light, extremely fanatical. The title of the #1 beauty of the North region was definitely not a boast. Zhu Xian'er was obviously used to this kind of scene, dealing with them skillfully and easily. She was elegant yet cold, making others unable to get close to her, but also not making others feel ill will, fully displaying the demeanor of a goddess. Ha ha ha, I've long heard that there's a stunning beauty in the North region, as expected, the reputation is well deserved. A young man walked out with large strides. He was only 22 or 23 years old, tall with long legs, and handsome beyond description. What was even more shocking was that there was actually a pair of light wings on his back, spreading out from time to time and flapping lightly, emitting an extremely domineering aura. He walked over with large strides, and the people on both sides were all shaken, involuntarily kneeling down. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.